Story 1.
Exposing my wife's cheating, sending her videos to friends, suing her, and leaving her behind. Kim and I first met roughly 7 years ago and quickly formed a close friendship. Both of us were raised in the Midwest, where our devout Christian beliefs placed God above all else, even family. Our Sundays were filled with church visits and hopeful discussions about our future plans. I pursued a successful career as an engineer with promising prospects, while Kim thrived in her role selling accounting software for a prominent technology firm based in Atlanta. Before our marriage, my parents generously gifted me a 3-bedroom house upon my college graduation. With their wealth, they aimed to share their success while still alive, unlike many who wait until after passing away. Mom and Dad found joy in giving during their lifetime. Kim and I exchanged vows a little over 5 years ago, and since then, we've been on an endless honeymoon. Our lovemaking life was vibrant, with passionate encounters at least 4 nights a week. We were viewed as soulmates, much to the amusement of our friends, who were envious of our closeness. Our joy multiplied when we welcomed 2 beautiful blonde twin girls into our lives. After their arrival, our focus shifted entirely to raising them in a nurturing and loving environment. Our lifestyle might be deemed dull by some. We typically dined at home most evenings, reserving Friday and Saturday nights for outings and Sundays for church. Unlike peers our age, we weren't drawn to socializing or keeping up with fashion trends. Kim opted for conservative attire both at work and home, reserving our love-making moments exclusively for our bedroom. Built on trust and transparency, forming a sturdy foundation for our marriage, Kim, naturally affectionate, expressed her love through tender gestures of touch, kisses, and hugs, all of which I adored. We relished in sharing our emotions and cherished each other deeply. While raising twins presented its challenges, I cherished every moment spent with them. Though the twins posed some stress for Kim, I gladly supported her through any difficulties. Our partnership was built on effective communication, ensuring we dealt with issues promptly. Life with Kim and our twin girls was going smoothly. However, a week before the annual exhibition, Kim received notice that she had to participate due to others falling ill with the virus. Despite her attempts to decline, she had no choice but to comply due to the urgency of the situation. She expressed her regret, saying she was sorry to leave us for 3 days, and that she had tried to avoid it by contacting her boss. She mentioned how much she hated being away from us. I reassured her that we would manage fine without her for a few days, and that we would miss her dearly. I helped her pack and accompanied her to the limo arranged by the company for her airport journey. Our marriage had always been solid, built on trust and transparency. There had never been any indication of her behaving in a way that wasn't loving or faithful. We shared everything openly and worked together as a team, especially when it came to our children. On the second night of the exhibition, I received a text from Greg, a colleague and friend who was at a cybersecurity event in Atlanta. He mentioned Kim being at the exhibition and asked if I was supposed to be at the security conference. He seemed curious about the trade show Kim was attending, and I confirmed it was in Atlanta but wasn't sure of the exact name. Greg's messages left me wondering what he was trying to imply. His message contained 2 photos and a video. I sat paralyzed with dread. The first photo depicted my wife in an unfamiliar outfit, the shortest dress I'd ever seen her wear, accentuating her ample chest with a plunging neckline. She wore pumps I didn't recognize, her hair and makeup flawless, radiating stunning allure. Never had she appeared so alluring to me. Initially, upon seeing the first photo, I convinced myself it must be someone resembling Kim, as it seemed implausible it could be her. I chuckled inwardly, musing, I wish Kim would dress like that one day. But the amusement faded when the subsequent photo emerged, a close-up of her closely seated next to Jonathan, one of her bosses. I sat there, stunned, motionless, not even blinking until the next photo materialized, a close-up of her smiling and gazing into Jonathan's eyes. My heart sank at the sight, though I attempted to rationalize that there must be a logical explanation, albeit futile. The following message contained a brief video clip showing my wife kissing Jonathan, her arms wrapped around his neck while his hand rested on her right breast. In that instant, my mind exploded. I felt as if my entire world collapsed upon me, tears of anguish streaming down my face, my heart racing, and a wave of nausea engulfing me. A message came through, "Hey, are you okay? What should I do? Can you see her right now?" "Yes, I'll give her a call right away to check on her." I dialed her number, hearing it ring several times before reaching voicemail. Leaving a message, I expressed our longing to speak with her and ensure she had a pleasant evening. I reached out to Greg, updating him on the call. "I just tried reaching her. What happened?" Greg's remorse was palpable. "David, I'm sorry about this." She took her phone out of her purse, glanced at the caller ID, then returned it to her purse. "I can't believe it's her. I've never seen her behave or dress like this before. Greg, it's okay. Thank you for being upfront with me. You're a true friend. I'll handle this myself. If possible, avoid confronting her. Keep me informed if anything else occurs, but don't waste time trailing her. I'll handle it from here. Are you going to be okay, buddy? No, I'm far from okay, but I know what I need to do. I'll handle it. I'm still reeling from the shock, but I'll come to terms with everything. Thanks again. Anytime. I'm here for you. Take care of yourself, Greg. Thanks once more. I poured a stronger drink and sat in the dimly lit living room, grappling with the sudden collapse of my world. In under 20 minutes, I had been oblivious to any issues in our relationship. How long had this been going on? Was I truly oblivious to the signs? No, she never gave me cause for concern. In fact, over the past 6 months, our bond had grown stronger, our closeness intensified. None of it made sense, leaving me bewildered. In the following hour, Greg sent more photos and videos. A brief clip showed them dancing, his hand on her back. Another captured them kissing on the dance floor. A photo depicted a deep, private kiss on a deserted dance floor, oblivious to the music's end. I acknowledged it was over between us, yet there was much I needed to unravel and comprehend. Leveraging my analytical skills as an engineer and problem solver, I spent the ensuing days devising a plan. Kim surprised me with a call at 10 p.m. After receiving their final photo, I took a deep breath, striving to compose myself. I resolved not to reveal any inkling of awareness about her actions. Hey there, sorry I missed your earlier call. I was at a dinner meeting and couldn't talk. I miss you so much, baby. Wish I could be there with you, cuddling under the covers, showering you with kisses. I miss you too, Kim. I love you deeply, and thanks for calling. The girls are adorable, and I'll send you some photos. They're missing their mom and want you to come home. I tried to leave tomorrow, but my boss insisted I stay. Hate being away from you, darling. We'll celebrate when you're back. Finish for today? Yes, I'm preparing for bed and another long work day. Love you, baby, and I'll call you tomorrow. Good night, Kim. I love you more than words can express. And with that, I hung up, tears welling up again. What I said was genuine. I loved her more than anything and hoped this was just a terrible dream. Past midnight, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I wondered if she was truly in her hotel room and what she was up to. My question was answered by another message from Greg. It was a photo of Kim and Jonathan on a lobby sofa, sharing a kiss, his hand beneath her short skirt, her arms wrapped around his neck. They resembled a couple in love, publicly displaying their affection. And one last thing, buddy, I'm done for today, but it looks like she's busy. Let me know if you want me to stop. I can easily put an end to this. It's tough to face right now, but thanks for the photos. No need, let her go. It's her wrongdoing, not yours. Stay out of it. Thanks again. I cried myself to sleep, knowing that the love of my life had betrayed me. Eventually, exhaustion and the comfort of our marriage vows and our daughter's sleep eased the pain and tears until I woke up the next morning. Kim sent me several affectionate messages, adorned with hearts, kisses, and emojis. She professed her love, expressing how much she missed both me and the girls. She even hinted at a passionate night ahead upon her return. When she came back, she showered me with sweetness and affection, behaving as though nothing had transpired. I began to wonder if perhaps she suffered from dissociative disorder or had been unknowingly medicated. Despite my search for explanations, I realized I needed to confront the reality and prepare for her imminent return home. Our frequent conversations seemed normal, with Kim expressing her longing to reunite with us. I couldn't determine what upset me more, her infidelity or the deceit accompanying it. Feeling deceived cut as deep as witnessing her embrace with Jonathan. Upon learning of my wife's betrayal through Greg's messages, I took decisive action. Leveraging my tech expertise, I discreetly installed tracking software on her phone, initially intended for locating misplaced devices. Opting for the latest software available, I even walked Kim through its setup. This software also featured a voice recorder, capable of capturing calls, texts, and emails, with automatic cloud uploads if activated. Let me clarify, my intention wasn't to spy on her, but circumstances warranted caution. Before this incident, I never considered invading her privacy. However, following recent events, my trust had been shattered irreparably. My priority was safeguarding our daughters and salvaging our marriage, if feasible. Thankfully, caring for the twins kept me occupied, offering respite from thoughts of our disintegrating relationship. Whether it was preparing breakfast, tidying up after them, or engaging in doll play, these moments were precious amidst the turmoil. Trust me, tending to 3-year-old twins is no small feat. It was 2 p.m., and I finally managed to get the girls to settle down for their afternoon nap. After tidying up the house and showering, I sat at the table to catch up. Kim had sent me 6 more affectionate messages, mentioning she would call at 5 p.m. once her day wrapped up. After reading them, I accessed the cloud from my laptop, logged into her account, and reviewed everything recorded since activating the spying software. I sat in shock as I read the messages exchanged with Jonathan. Here are a few excerpts. "You were incredible last night, baby. Can't wait for tonight. Thanks, kitten. I enjoyed it too. Can we head to my room after work before dinner? Certainly, but I need to call my husband first. I should be ready by 5:15. Does your husband suspect anything? Of course not. He thinks I love him, and I'll keep it that way. We've kept it a secret for over 6 months, and he's clueless. Don't worry." My anger became overwhelming, prompting me to stop reading. Kitty? Did he call her kitten? That's my term for her. During closeness. Did she give him that too? Was I truly that oblivious? What kind of fool was I? I dropped my laptop on a chair and screamed, grabbing a lamp from the table and hurling it forcefully into the wall, shattering it into pieces. The rage I had managed to control now consumed me. As I was about to break another lamp, I heard the girls crying. Their cries snapped me back to reality, and I regained control. I rushed into the bedroom, holding both girls in my arms until they calmed down. After cleaning up the glass from my outburst, I let them play in the living room while I sat with another strong drink, reflecting on my actions. In my view, the marriage was beyond repair, and it was time to take action. I lacked the strength to listen to their conversations or review any more files, so I allowed them to accumulate in the cloud. I decided to play along with Kim, just as she had deceived me. My immediate plan was to act like a loving husband while strategizing my next steps. I intended to contact a divorce lawyer, hire a private investigator, and find a way to secure custody of the girls. Their well-being was my top priority and the only thing that truly mattered to me. Hey, sweetheart, how are the girls holding up? They're missing their mommy. Oh my goodness, they're on my mind all day, every day. And of course, you too. I can't wait to wrap my arms around you when I get back. I'm going to give you the warmest kiss you've ever had. I played along saying, "Oh darling, I think of you constantly, longing to embrace my loving, beautiful wife. Soon, my love, we'll be reunited." Somehow I kept it together, and our call lasted precisely 15 minutes. At 5:15, she bid farewell, saying, "I love you, David. I have to go catch the bus back to the hotel. I'll message you later." "I love you," another effortlessly delivered lie. She had quite the talent for it. "I love you too, sweetheart, more than you can imagine." The pain of her deception had now transformed into contempt, anger, and a desire for revenge. I was determined to expose her lies and hold her accountable. I had loved her wholeheartedly, making this betrayal all the more difficult to bear. I greeted her at the airport, and she embraced and kissed me just as she had promised. Either she was an exceptional actress, or she genuinely cared for me deeply. Was her involvement with Jonathan merely physical? Her behavior continued to baffle me. She spent an hour with the girls, relishing their company. That night, she was exceptionally affectionate in bed, repeatedly expressing how much she missed me and the girls, and lamenting her prolonged absence. She spoke of wanting nothing more than to be with me, holding each other in bed. She was tender, loving, and entirely different from the woman I saw at the fair. I reciprocated her affection and cherished our time together. It felt genuine, and I yearned for it to be authentic because being with her was all I desired. Yet deep down, I knew it would soon come to an end. I kept my newfound knowledge hidden, showering her with love and fulfilling her every night. To outsiders, our relationship seemed idyllic, sparking envy in others. This charade persisted for 3 months, during which I searched for any signs of infidelity but found none. She arrived home from work at her usual time every evening, with no unusual phone calls or text messages. I even dared to hope that it was all a mistake and that things would resolve themselves. Mr. Bryce, a private investigator, called me and arranged to meet the next day. I drove downtown to their office and sat in their conference room. "Good afternoon, David. Good to see you again." "Likewise, Mr. Bryce." "David, I wish I had better news, but unfortunately I have to deliver some bad news. Are you prepared to review our findings?" I sighed and nodded in agreement. While I hoped for the best, deep down, I knew what was happening between Kim and Jonathan. Mr. Bryce placed a thick leather 3-ring binder in front of me. It contained sections labeled text messages, voice transcripts, video calls, phone call transcripts, and photos. "Mr. Bryce, before we delve into this, I'm perplexed because I've been closely monitoring her activities and schedule for the past 3 months, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She's been the ideal wife and partner, and none of this makes sense. Let me guide you through this and see if anything becomes clearer." I refrained from accessing cloud files because I couldn't bear the thought of reading the texts, hoping for a positive outcome. Unfortunately, that hope was dashed. There were over 75 pages of text messages, 25 pages of emails, and 75 pages of time-stamped photos showing them entering and exiting hotel rooms together. Additionally, there were over 82 video calls and 50 pages of phone conversations. Kim and Jonathan had been visiting a motel at least 4 times a week for the past 3 months, spending an average of 2 hours together during each visit. It appears that for the past month, there have been 2 men meeting your wife 4 times a week. Do you recognize this man? Oh my God, is this Jason Sinclair? Is he the CEO of her company? Are you saying she's involved with 2 men, one of whom is the CEO? I'm sorry I have to tell you this, but based on the evidence from text messages, phone calls, and videos, it's evident that he's engaged in a carnal relationship with your wife. The video call labeled balcony actually captured them in a love-making moment, with him behind her as she leaned over the railing. They seemed unaware they were being recorded. Our high-def video captured close-ups of their faces, and the audio was also recorded. He played the video on the 80-inch screen. There was Kim, my wife, leaning over the railing with her CEO standing behind her. I felt sick to my stomach. I had to step out of the room for a few minutes to compose myself. I returned to the conference room, urging them to continue, as I was now eager to see what my wife had been up to. The video labeled Balcony 2 shows your wife with both Jason and Jonathan simultaneously. I regret having to show you all this, but since they were in public, you can use these videos if you decide to proceed with your divorce and custody battle. I sat there, mouth agape, still finding it difficult to believe it could be Kim. I prayed fervently that it was all just a colossal mistake. David, we've looked into Jonathan Wills and Jason Sinclair. Jonathan has been married for 10 years with 4 young children. Mr. Sinclair has also been married for 25 years with 3 grown children. Text messages reveal that Jonathan introduced Jason into their activities after your wife expressed interest in a triangle of love. It's quite grim, so I'll leave you to review it when you're ready. Here's the folder and a USB drive containing all the files and videos your lawyer will likely need. When I met with my lawyer, she was astonished at the wealth of evidence we had gathered, and couldn't believe there were no prior signs of infidelity at home. Kim continued to play the role of a devoted wife and mother, behaving as if everything was normal. The lawyer outlined various legal avenues based on the evidence I provided, but needed time to explore our options fully, scheduling another appointment for the following week. I instructed her to begin filing the divorce papers as soon as possible. Leaving her office, I felt a pit in my stomach. I knew it was over before these meetings, but watching those videos extinguished any hope of reconciliation. I was still baffled. Who was this woman? Later that evening, after putting the girls to bed, we watched an old movie I found on Netflix called Unfaithful. I heard it was a good film. Let's give it a shot, I suggested, hitting play. Given the film's theme of infidelity, I had prepared for the conversation in advance. During the movie, I casually mentioned a female intern at my office who had been showing interest in me for months. Can you imagine me with another woman? I chuckled. Kim eyed me suspiciously. Really? Who? If I catch you even thinking about being with her, I'm leaving. Got it. You're mine and no one else's, she asserted sternly. Despite my attempts to keep the mood light, she was dead serious. She made it abundantly clear that she wouldn't tolerate any deceit. It was astounding how indignant she was about it, considering her own actions. It was driving me mad. David, why didn't you tell me about her sooner? What's her name? Kim, relax. She's just an intern, a young, flirtatious girl. I've completely ignored her. What about you, Kim? You're the most beautiful girl in your office. Do you mean to tell me no one ever flirts with you? Of course not. They all know I'm married and would never cheat on you. So in our entire marriage, you never entertained the thought of being with another guy? Or did anything like that? Not even a friendly kiss? Have you ever cheated on me? Baby. Her anger flared. Are you kidding me? Did you seriously just ask me that? I constantly express my love for you. I'm always faithful to you, and I couldn't imagine being with another man. You're being ridiculous. I can't believe you'd even think that. I apologized, agreeing with her, and resumed watching the movie. I chuckled to myself, thinking she could have been an actress with how convincing she was. No wonder she excelled at her job. Once things settled down, she leaned against my shoulder again, and I knew it was time. I grabbed my phone, opened the messaging app, and selected a photo of Kim and Jonathan kissing on the dance floor, his hand on her behind. I was studying the photo when she noticed my distraction. What are you doing, David? Why aren't you watching the movie? Because what I'm looking at is more real. What do you mean? I muted the movie and displayed the photo to her. She froze, attempting to speak but failing. I kept my gaze on the photo. Quite the passionate kiss you're giving, Jonathan. Allow me to explain. Where did you get this? You were dining with your buddy Greg Stanton, who spotted you with that guy in the restaurant. He texted me to confirm if it was you or if he was mistaken. Turns out it was indeed you, and he sent me this. Also, gotta say, you look stunning in that dress. I've never seen you in something so revealing. Were you trying to impress your boyfriend? Oh, you have an explanation. I'm all ears, I remarked, placing the phone back on my lap. Baby, we only had one dance and he was intoxicated. After the song ended, he grabbed me and kissed me. What you don't see is that right afterward, I slapped him and caused a scene. I would never allow that to happen. I actually bought this dress for a business dinner, but didn't realize how revealing it was until now. I'm so sorry. I understand. It happens. And that was the only incident? I sensed her wavering confidence and reassured her. Yes, baby, and he won't try it again. The movie resumed, and I reclined quietly, knowing Kim was uneasy. After a few minutes, I retrieved my phone and began playing a video of them sitting on the couch, with his hand under her skirt. She shot me a frightened look. What are you watching now? Remember that night when you called saying you had a long day and were getting ready for bed? Yes, she whispered. It's interesting. I received another text from Greg 2 hours after your call, and this time it was a video. Do you want to see? I asked, hitting play, revealing her and Jonathan kissing while his hands roamed her lovemaking areas that should have been mine alone. I'm eager to hear a new explanation, I remarked, smiling. My anger had dissipated, replaced by contempt. And amusement at her response. Oh, David, I'm so sorry. After we hung up, Jonathan called, saying we needed to discuss an issue with a client we were meeting in the morning. He asked me to meet him in the lobby to prepare. I barely recall this video because I had a few drinks and got a bit drunk. You know how I get when I'm intoxicated. I understand the video looks damning, but nothing happened beyond that. I distinctly recall going to my room, telling him to stop, reminding him I was happily married, and leaving. Nothing transpired. You have to trust me. That's part of the issue, kitten, I said, emphasizing the nickname. I noticed her reaction when I said that and continued. The problem is, I've always believed you, yet in the last 20 minutes you've lied to me twice. Can you understand my perspective? I'm here alone, and the woman I love is kissing her boss in 2 photos, dressed in the most revealing outfit I've ever seen her wear. How do you think I feel? Baby David, I love you. This happened 3 months ago. Why didn't you confront me earlier? Honestly? I wanted to see if you'd come clean on your own. I wanted assurance that my wife was as truthful and transparent as we've always been with each other. But now I see where we stand. Are there any other lies? Are you involved with him? Do you love him? Now I was toying with her, relishing her confusion and performance. She began sobbing, repeatedly professing her love for me. Kim, please refrain from telling me how much you love me. I know you love me, and I still love you, but that doesn't change the reality of these photos. I need answers. Are there other deceptions? I added discreetly, hitting the record button on the phone. David, hear me out. Nothing beyond a kiss happened. I admit I kissed him as you saw, but that was the extent of it. Each time I told him to stop. I'm not sure what Greg saw or told you, but you have to trust me, all right? Stop crying, baby. I trust you, however, I'm puzzled by your attire. You never dressed like that for me, nor do you style your hair and makeup that way. Was it for him? You haven't answered my question. Do you have feelings for him? Are you considering leaving me, Kim? Please, I need the truth. The tears resumed. No, David, my love is only for you. I never want to lose you. Nothing happened, and I'm not sure why I dressed like that. It's unlike me. Perhaps it was because other women were dressed similarly, and I wanted to look as good. I'm not certain. I felt a bit insecure. I can understand that, but why didn't you inform me about Jonathan and your interactions? Since nothing truly occurred and I ended it, I didn't want to upset you. He's my superior, and I couldn't risk losing my job. If anything happened, I would have told you immediately. You understand, right? I comforted her with a kiss and embraced her gently, allowing her to cry. This marked the beginning of a month-long scheme to exact my revenge. That night, we made love, and I reveled in her remarkable skills, detached as her spouse and envisioning myself as one of her lovers. I refused to deny myself her body or caution her about anything peculiar. Her acting was commendable, but at that moment, I was indifferent. She was more fervent than ever, attempting to convince me of my exclusive place in her heart. This routine persisted for the following weeks. Each night, her performance was flawless, and I simply savored the spectacle. The next morning, I checked the cloud for any correspondence with Jonathan. Predictably, she didn't disappoint. Oh my God, someone took photos of us at the fair and sent them to David. His friend saw me at the restaurant without David. I'm unsure if he's aware, but the video showed us kissing. Damn, now that you mention it, I recall a man with a phone across from us observing, but I didn't think much of it. How did David react? Nothing. I convinced him nothing happened. I intervened. He's unaware I spent the night in your room. I persuaded him it was drinks-induced and made amends. He's easily swayed. A few kisses and good love-making have always sufficed. Be cautious, baby. We agreed to meet there tomorrow at 1 p.m. as usual. Can't wait. Love you, baby. Love you too, kitten. That marked the final message, and I sat silently pondering it all. Undoubtedly, I felt like the world's biggest fool, yet there's a certain satisfaction in revenge. So, I proceeded with determination. However, I took pleasure in observing Kim's antics and awaited to see how many more lies she would spin. Naturally, my first course of action was to tend to my financial affairs, transferring funds, closing accounts, and the like. I opted to keep my primary Visa card active, but slashed the limit to $2,500 to mitigate potential damage. Since Kim remained clueless about my mounting anger, she never anticipated any changes. I confirmed with my lawyer that since the house was mine pre-marriage, I wouldn't be compelled to vacate upon notification. Naturally, I drafted the infamous email containing videos, texts, and photos that I eventually sent to all her contacts, friends, family, and co-workers. Additionally, I crafted duplicate binders from my personal account for Mrs. Sinclair and Mrs. Wills to share in their anguish. These would be distributed simultaneously with notifications and legal filings. I instructed my lawyer to gear up for public civil lawsuits against both Jonathan, her boss, and Jason, the company's CEO. Given the company's prominence on the East Coast, my lawyer relished the prospect of involving the CEO. We planned to propose a settlement before unveiling the CEO and manager's alleged carnal aggravation of employees. Collaborating with child services attorneys, we aimed for full custody and diligently compiled documents for the investigation. Over the ensuing weeks, everything appeared normal. We tended to the children and spent quality time together daily. Our conversations danced around the elephant in the room, leaving the issue untouched. I'm certain my silence on the matter drove her to the brink of madness. The uncertainty of my thoughts must have been agonizing. To further toy with Kim, I posed a few probing questions. So, Kim, has your boss taken any action against you since the fair? Is there something you'd like to share? Having gleaned insights from her conversations with Jonathan, I marveled at her composure in maintaining her facade of deceit. It was amusing to observe her reaction, and now I could even predict when she was about to lie. She responded calmly, stating that nothing had occurred. It felt odd because both of us were acting as if nothing had transpired, which was true in reality. He remained completely professional, and our interactions were minimal due to our busy schedules. I sat there with a wry smile, still astonished that the woman who bore my children and whom I loved could lie so effortlessly. That night, I released the last remnants of the anger simmering within me. I confronted her and took full advantage of her that night. Oh my God, David, what got into you? You're behaving so wildly today. I've never seen you so bold and uninhibited. I enjoyed it. What a whirlwind. I thought to myself, I knew this would be the final encounter before all of this turmoil surfaced the next day, and I intended to take everything I could from my soon-to-be ex-wife. That afternoon, the sheriff entered the office of Tricom International and requested to see Mr. Sinclair. Moments later, Sheriff Clark handed him an envelope. Mr. Sinclair, you've been served. A moment later, Sinclair found himself alone in his spacious office, clutching the envelope with fear gripping his entire being. After reading the complaint repeatedly, he promptly instructed his secretary to summon Jason to his office while simultaneously calling him. Jason, too, had just been served by the same sheriff. He rushed into Sinclair's office, and they both stood there stunned and bewildered. What the hell? How did this happen, Jason? If my wife catches wind of this, I'm finished. This is on you. You assured me this woman would never leave us. Fix this, Jason, or I swear I'll ruin you and your family. Do you understand? Sinclair was not one to be trifled with, a ruthless businessman who had clawed his way to the top of the multi-billion-dollar organization and had no intention of backing down. Jonathan hurried out of his office and waited for the elevator to descend to the 12th floor, intending to speak with Kim. As he traversed the hallway toward her office, he noticed the sheriff approaching from the opposite direction, indicating that he had come from Kim's direction. Bursting into her office, he found her seated at her desk, tears streaming down her face. Overwhelmed with emotion, she was unable to speak. David had shattered her world much like she had done to him months earlier. It took her more than an hour to compose herself enough to articulate her thoughts. Oh, what in the world happened? Or how did he find out about everything? What do you mean? I've just been served with divorce papers. What do you mean by us? Sinclair and I are also being sued and facing a civil lawsuit for our actions. We're unsure of the evidence against us, but there must be more than just the 2 images you saw. You need to convince David to back off, or else Sinclair will ruin us and my family. Oh my God, this is terrible. It's awful. You must go to him and make him see reason. Do whatever it takes to halt this. Head home and address this. Call me tonight if you can and keep me informed. Trembling, Kim packed her belongings and drove home. Her beloved husband and the father of her children was divorcing her. She didn't want a divorce, and genuinely loved David. However, she found herself unable to resist the allure of carnal excitement. She needed to make David understand that she couldn't bear to lose him over this. Returning to an empty house, she found the girls were at David's sister's house, as they were every afternoon while they both worked. She phoned David's sister, requesting she keep the children overnight. Without inquiring further, Katie gladly agreed to take care of the girls for the night. Kim showered, styled her hair and makeup, and anxiously awaited David's return from work. At 6, she heard the garage door open and nervously anticipated his entrance into the house. "Hi, Kim. Didn't expect to see you tonight. Thought you'd be with Jonathan. Oh, wait, he's married with kids. This might get awkward." "David, please, let's talk." She took his hand and seated him beside her on the sofa. Despite the circumstances, she appeared surprisingly composed and more pleasant than usual when greeting him. Expecting this, he played along. "David, as you already know, I was served today, but do you realize I don't want a divorce? I need you and love you. I won't sign these papers. Jonathan means nothing to me. Yes, we had lovemaking, but it wasn't love. I just needed it, and I'm truly sorry. I'll never do it again, I promise." "Oh, you promise? Guess I can trust you now." "Sure, let's forget everything and get back to normal," I said, smiling lovingly. Kim embraced me and planted a kiss. "Thank you, baby. I love you so much. I'm grateful you forgive me and understand. I won't lie to you again." Surprised, I was certain she caught my sarcasm. Pulling away, I gently pushed her aside. "You're delusional. I can't trust you anymore. After all your lies and deceit, there's nothing left. I gave you many chances, but you kept lying, deceiving me, and ruining our lives. I know all about your daily hotel rendezvous with your bosses. Did you really think I'd take you back after all this? Have you even considered the damage you're causing to the girls? I can't turn a blind eye to this." "But you can, and why go after Sinclair and Jonathan? Well, your partners in crime are also CEOs of a multi-billion-dollar company. Once I'm out of here, I'll need money to properly support the girls since they're partly responsible for destroying our marriage and my life. I'll destroy them too. I plan to dismantle their family, hit them financially, and use them the way they used you." Kim had never witnessed David express himself in such a manner, nor had she seen him so intensely angry and focused. The seriousness of the situation finally struck her, and she realized she had lost control over both the situation and her husband. All she could do now was plead. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she knelt before David, clutching his legs and begging for forgiveness. Though David felt a pang of sympathy for her, his anger overpowered any compassion, and he lifted her onto the sofa, speaking to her in a gentle tone as if she were a child. David laid out a plan. "Listen, Kim, pack your bag and stay at your mom's for a few nights. Get a lawyer, then we can arrange a meeting to discuss everything. In the meantime, a word to the wise, I suggest you stay away from Jason and Jonathan. Things are about to get messy." Later that evening at her mom's, she explained that she and David had a disagreement, and she needed to stay with her for a while. At 11 p.m., she called Jonathan on his cell. Jonathan quickly looped in Jason on a 3-way call. "Jason, are you here? Kim, are you there?" Yes, we are here," Sinclair initiated the conversation. "So Kim, did you manage to persuade him to give up the lawsuits and the divorce?" "No. In fact, he kicked me out and warned me to be careful because it could lead to trouble." Sinclair shouted into the phone, "Jesus Christ, Jonathan, what have you done, Kim, you freaking prick? I swear I will have you eliminated if my family finds out about this. I don't care what you do, but make it stop." Kim cried, "I can't do anything. He's out of control and won't listen to anything I say. He doesn't even answer my calls or texts." Sinclair spoke up, "Jonathan, you need to fix this. Make an appointment with David and have him meet us at a bar somewhere. Anything loud, and the noisier the better. Kim, you will be there too, and ask him to drop the lawsuit in front of us. If he says no, then Jonathan and I will explain how damaging it will be for him and his family if he doesn't back down. I have people tasked with fixing things like this, and I won't hesitate to use them to keep this show from turning into complete crap. Jonathan, do you understand what you need to do?" "Yes, Mr. Sinclair." "Kim, you know what you have to do, right?" "Yes, Mr. Sinclair." Do it and make it happen tomorrow afternoon. We don't have time to waste. Sinclair disappeared. Kim and Jonathan hung up after a few minutes, considering the situation. That night, upon hearing the call, David wasn't surprised by their desperation and devised his own plan. As expected, Jonathan called the next morning to arrange a settlement meeting. They agreed to meet at 6 p.m. in a courtyard. At 4 p.m., David was at his private investigator's office preparing for the meeting. They utilized cutting-edge technology with noise cancellation to capture clear sound even in noisy environments. A private investigator would also be present to film the meeting as evidence. David arrived at 6:15, purposefully keeping them waiting and allowing time for the private investigator to set up his video camera. Upon seeing Kim, he approached the group. "Kim, I'm surprised to see you here with your partners, but I suppose we know where your allegiances lie. Gentlemen, what brings us together? Why are we here?" Sinclair spoke up. "David, I'm Jason Sinclair, and I requested this meeting." "Sinclair, you look quite different in person. These videos don't capture your essence. Can't say it's a pleasure to meet you." "Indeed, that's precisely why we're here. This is Jonathan Wills." "Jonathan, the man who slept with my wife and wrecked my marriage." "Can't say it's a pleasure to meet any of you." Sinclair interjected. "I understand your anger. If I were in your shoes, I'm not sure how I'd react, but we need to discuss something." "Follow me. What's on your mind?" asked David. "We want you to drop the lawsuits against me, Jonathan, and the company." "Funny, that's all?" "Oh no, sorry, can't do that. Someone has to pay for taking away the most important thing in my life," David stated, looking at Kim, "the only woman I've ever loved and the mother of my children." Kim began to cry, realizing the magnitude of the damage she had caused. "What will it take for you to end this and take Kim back?" "Name your price." "Firstly, no amount of money could ever make me take her back. She betrayed my love, trust, and our children's lives for a fling with you two. It's out of the question. I'll drop the civil and corporate cases under two conditions. Firstly, I want $5 million compensation. Secondly, I want to meet both your wives, and Kim must fully admit her actions. If you agree to these conditions, I'll end the legal proceedings." "Go to hell, David. I'll offer you 100 grand and you'll sign an agreement to keep quiet about this forever," Sinclair whispered. "I won't let my family suffer if they find out, David. I'll end you. Kim told us your daily routine, making you vanish would be easy." "Let's try again." David was surprised but smiled and took a sip of his drink. "Well, I'll reduce the amount to $4 million, but your families must know what you did." Sinclair was stunned. "David, you're sealing your fate. Think it over. Drop the charges and take Kim back. It was just a fling. We can resolve this." David grabbed his phone and sent 2 text messages. Then he accessed his email and dispatched the prearranged email containing all the videos and images. Texts had now been distributed to all of Kim's friends, family, and colleagues. The 2 messages he sent were to the criers stationed outside Jason and Jonathan's residences, awaiting his directives. The instructions were simple: deliver the package. Within moments, Mrs. Sinclair and Mrs. Wills possessed duplicate 3-ring binders containing comprehensive evidence of their husband's affair, including photos, videos, messages, phone logs, and other incriminating evidence. Sinclair, growing increasingly irate due to David's apparent indifference, erupted in anger. "What the hell, David? I'm speaking to you. What's your response? Are you dropping the charges?" To which David retorted, "My answer to you, Jason, Jonathan, and my wife is, go to hell." Just then, the phones of both Jason and Jonathan began to ring. It was their wives on the line. Sinclair's face reddened, shooting David a glare of fury. Jonathan, visibly shaken, even teared up. Kim, bewildered, questioned David about the commotion. His response was cryptic. "Check your email in a few minutes, and I believe you'll understand." After ending the call with his wife, Sinclair pointed an accusatory finger at David. "You're dead, David. I'll slit your throat and watch you die like a dog." With that threat, he stormed out of the bar. Jonathan, confronting David, uttered a plaintive, "Why? Why would you do this to me?" David was astounded by the question. "Seriously? You've been using my wife, the love of my life and the mother of my twin girls, every day for the past 6 months, arranging trysts with Sinclair, and you're surprised someone would retaliate? Everything I sent to your sweet wife was for her sake, to expose what a depraved beast of prey you are and how you've destroyed countless lives." Kim's phone began ringing as her sister, brother, and aunt called her shortly afterward. They all watched the videos and photos and had numerous questions. Initially, Kim denied knowledge of the situation, but then checked her email to see what I had sent. Her jaw dropped, and she shot me an angry look. "How could you do this to me? You've made it too easy, darling. I truly love you, but it's over between us." After I hand this audio recording of the meeting to the authorities and social services, my lawyer is confident I'll secure full custody of the girls. And you'll be fortunate to evade jail time. I'm sorry, but you must face the consequences of your actions. To prevent them from becoming public knowledge, TRICOM resolved the lawsuit by compensating David Hunter with $2 million. Jason Sinclair was ousted as CEO and terminated without severance due to breaching the morals clause in his contract. He suffered losses exceeding $10 million in stock options and forfeited a $5 million severance package. Sinclair also received a 5-year sentence for conspiracy to commit homicide and other charges. His wife divorced him while he was incarcerated and financially decimated him. Upon investigation of his business dealings, he exited prison destitute, bereft of family, and homeless. This news provided David with some solace, and he even cracked a smile for the first time in months. Mrs. Wills also divorced Jonathan, leaving him without money, shelter, child support, or half of his income in alimony. He was fined $1 million in a civil trial for conspiracy, infidelity, and loss of affection. Following his job loss, Jonathan resorted to working as a day laborer. Learning of Jonathan's downfall further gratified David, who took pleasure in Jonathan's subsequent bankruptcy and life under an overpass among day workers. Kim received a 5-year prison sentence, but with David's assistance, it was commuted to 1 year of house arrest, followed by 4 years of probation for conspiracy. She lost custody of the children, and David gained full custody. Despite her efforts, she failed to secure a divorce due to the evidence and the nature of the crime. With the house belonging to David, she found herself homeless upon termination. She earned the same amount as David, so no child support was necessary. Kim spiraled into a profound depression and now resides in her mother's basement. Her family turned against her for her actions, resulting in the loss of her visitation rights with her children. The email I sent with the attached videos and photos exposed a dark side of Kim that no one had recognized before. This had the intended effect, completely shattering the support network within the Kim family. Forgiveness seems unattainable for Kim, even from herself. She relies on medication following 3 self-destruction attempts and has been in and out of mental hospitals for the past 6 months, struggling to come to terms with the lives she contributed to destroying. David now dedicates all his time to his daughters. Being free from work post-divorce allows him to focus entirely on raising his children. Since Kim's self-destruction attempt, the girls have not seen their mother, but they receive ample support from David's sister and mother. They will recover from this traumatic ordeal without any lasting effects. While revenge brought a fleeting sense of satisfaction, it cannot fully heal David's wounds. He still harbors love and forgiveness for Kim, but the memory of her betrayal remains etched in his mind. Taking care of his daughters keeps him occupied and wards off loneliness. However, due to the betrayal, lies, and deceit, it will take years before David can open his heart to love and trust again. It's remarkable how seemingly insignificant actions can have profound effects on numerous lives. Caution is advised.
Story 2.
My wife, who's 36, and I, who's 39, have been together for 7 years and married for 5. We've had our share of good and bad times like any couple, but I believed our relationship was strong with trust and love. We both had regular jobs, and though we weren't rich, we were happy and comfortable. About a year ago, my wife, let's call her Anna, got really interested in personal finance. She started reading books, watching YouTube videos, and going to seminars on the topic. I supported her new interest, thinking it was great that she wanted to improve our finances for a better future. Honestly, I don't know much about finance. Besides basic things like mutual funds, I'm pretty clueless about investing. I only have a superficial understanding and don't invest much except in mandatory tax-saving schemes. Coming from a marketing background, I have limited exposure to finance, so I usually rely on tax consultants like most people do. With the rise of finance influencers on social media, Anna got into learning about it too. She wanted to understand the stock market and cryptocurrency. While I get the stock market, crypto is way beyond my understanding. I did join Anna for a few virtual seminars at first, but the concept seemed alien to me. Things were fine until she started spending more time with a wealthy investor she met at one of these seminars, whom she called D. D was supposedly mentoring her on investing and wealth building. The mentoring concept is becoming more common in America, with everyone claiming to be a mentor. She also stopped contributing money to household expenses, saying she was investing in our future. I trusted her and managed all the household bills on my own. I didn't pay much attention, but as weeks turned into months, their relationship raised serious concerns. Anna spent a lot of time with D, even late into the night. She justified it by saying she had a day job and evening was the only time for her passion. When I expressed my concerns, she got defensive and belittled me for not understanding investments. She mocked me, saying she'd make us rich and I'd regret not supporting her. I tried not to interfere, but when the red flags became obvious, I had to be alert. She also started dressing provocatively, but I didn't bring it up since I'd never commented on her clothes before. However, she neglected our relationship, so I confronted her. As usual, she brushed off my concerns, saying she was securing our future, and I should be supportive, not judgmental. Gradually, I became distant because I felt like I was carrying the relationship alone. I thought she'd notice, but she was too busy learning about investments, and we became more like housemates. We rarely spoke unless it was important, even though we lived in the same house. After her day job, she went out for seminars or mentorship classes. One evening, I walked past the seminar hall where Anna's mentor, Dee, used to teach a finance class. Something prompted me to go inside and see what was happening. Upon entering, I noticed a different event taking place. I inquired with the security staff about Dee's company seminars and their frequency. They informed me that these seminars were not regular, with the last one occurring months ago. Outside, I saw some guys in t-shirts promoting a finance masterclass with the influencer's name. I approached them, got details, and took note of everything. The influencer held seminars every 2 to 3 months, but mentorship classes, led by mentors like Dee in cafes, were weekly from 7 to 9 p.m. Anna used to come home after midnight. I gathered details from the cafe and left. The next day, I asked Anna if she had a class that day, and she curtly replied, "I have classes every day." Despite this, I knew from my previous findings that the class was only on Saturdays. In the evening, I visited the cafe and witnessed Anna in an intimate situation with Dee. I observed them exchanging flirtatious glances and recorded their interactions. I stood at a distance, watching until they engaged in a more intimate act. I recorded it when they were about to kiss, and then sat at their table, identifying myself as Anna's soon-to-be ex-husband. Anna tried to explain it as a one-on-one mentoring session, but I sarcastically remarked on the close mentoring. The other guy laughed and left, showing a player's attitude. Directly asking Anna if she slept with the other guy, she admitted to it, justifying it as part of an investing deal. She claimed it was a component of her personal finance education, where Dee promised significant earnings after completing the classes and fulfilling his requests, which included sleeping with him. She agreed to it, and I sensed she was trying to justify her actions. I played along for a while, asking if it was consensual. She confirmed it, saying it was a one-time thing for our future. Losing my temper, I shouted at her, questioning why she took it upon herself to secure our future. I told her she didn't need to think about mine. I could handle it. I yelled so loudly that people nearby glared at us. I stood up and left the cafe. Outside, she tried to hold my arms, but I shrugged her off, telling her to go to her mentor and not come home. Returning home devastated, I couldn't believe she used the pretext of learning personal finance to hide her infidelity. A few minutes later, Anna arrived, claiming it wasn't for fun. She slept with him to learn money-making tricks. I asked her to leave the house, and she pleaded, insisting it wasn't cheating but part of a business. I couldn't understand what kind of business she was involved in. I told her there was no point sleeping with her mentor to learn personal finance. She could earn actual money without doing so. She got angry, saying she'd prove me wrong, calling me too old-fashioned to understand modern concepts. She went into a mode of showing off her potential earnings, claiming she'd be a billionaire while I'd retire with little money. I told her she could do whatever she wanted, but not while with me. She packed her stuff and left. 2 days later, on Saturday, she returned, stating she wasn't there to apologize but to take her remaining stuff. I didn't respond, and she drove off. She seemed unremorseful, choosing her actions over our relationship. Update. Not much has occurred except for the divorce, so here's a quick update. Anna didn't come close to learning personal finance. It looked more like a scam than an investment. I don't know a lot about it, but anyone promising quick money and huge returns is suspicious. Making money genuinely isn't easy, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight. But it's not my concern anymore. My divorce was finalized last week, and it went smoothly. I don't have significant wealth for her to fight over. Our home was a rented condo. In terms of alimony, she earned almost as much as me. Also, she cheated, so she isn't entitled to pay alimony. The joint account is closed and we split the money. We don't have children, so there's no question of child support. Thank goodness we don't have kids. It would have complicated things. It's not as easy as it sounds. I'm still coping with her cheating. She's been telling everyone I'll come back, begging for reconciliation when she's rich, after learning about personal finance risks. I wished her luck. Show everyone that our divorce happened because I was insecure about her progress. She labeled me as controlling and jealous, but I listened with a smile and showed everyone the video I recorded of her with the fair partner. She hid her face after that, and common friends quickly changed their alliances. The last I heard about her, she was living with her mom during the divorce period. She's definitely not remorseful for what she destroyed. I don't know if she's genuinely learning personal finance or investing, or if it was just an excuse for an affair. If she succeeds in sorting her finances, good for her. I don't want money tainted with infidelity. By the way, recently I started watching a lot of videos on investing. I might be jumping to conclusions too fast. I don't know, but with ample free online videos providing enough information for beginners, I highly doubt you need a mentor for this. It's something you can self-examine. Right now, I'm trying to distance myself from any conversation that involves her. It was mentally draining. I've picked up my painting hobby to keep myself distracted, joined a fitness club to shed extra calories, and I'm focusing on eating healthy and keeping drinks in check. I drank too much during the pre-divorce period and gained a lot of extra pounds. I'll update the list if anything progresses. Update. It wasn't a finance class, it was a scam, and that's the truth. The main point in this update is that Anna fell wounded person to a scam. Remember that finance influencer who conducted seminars? Turns out he was a scam artist, deceiving people and making false promises of significant returns. Anna invested about 30% of her income in that scheme, even selling valuable assets like her family heirloom diamond ring and platinum necklace to go all in. It appears everything was just a scam. The influencer is now on the run, and his teammates, including the affair partner, have been arrested with an ongoing investigation. After this news broke, those Anna had boasted to about her impending riches mocked her. She had flaunted her newfound knowledge, belittling those with limited investment understanding. Now, those same people are targeting and making fun of her. Apparently, she blocked many of those mocking her, even dedicating her social media account due to being tagged in posts related to the finance influencer she supported. It's a lesson in not boasting before achieving victory, something she had been doing all along. I've made significant progress, shedding extra weight and getting into muscle training, which I enjoy. I've also returned to painting, and it feels really good. I haven't rushed into dating yet, not because I'm trying to forget the past, but simply because I'm not ready for it. Clearly, he was a scammer who managed to deceive her. Update. I had a visitor, and it turned out to be Anna. She looked really sad and told me she had fallen for a scam. A business partner and his boss, who was into fraud, had cheated a lot of people, including her, and ran off with their money to another country. I asked if the partner got caught, but she said no. The partner and a few other mentors were close to the fraud boss and managed to escape at the right time, leaving the rest of the team behind. I asked if she came to me because her partner ran away, but she said no. She claimed she loved me and wanted to talk. I reminded her that we were already divorced, so there was no point in talking. She said karma punished her. She lost a lot of money and respect, and people were mocking her. She pointed out that I came out fine from the situation and asked what more I wanted. I told her I wanted peace, her out of my life, and at that moment, out of my house. She then suggested that now that she and Dee had nothing between them, we could get back together. I disagreed, saying Dee wouldn't have taken her because he had many women like her learning money-making tricks. She pleaded for reconciliation, saying she wasn't emotionally involved with her partner and got carried away by the idea of getting rich quickly. I made it clear that getting back together was not an option. I had moved on, and her pleading didn't affect me. If she had pleaded when her affair was exposed, I might have considered forgiveness, but seeing her true colors changed that. She came back to me only after losing everything, still mocking me as she left the house. During the divorce, she showed no remorse. Now, when she lost everything, she came to me. Unbelievable. I told her to leave because I had to go to my fitness class. She commented on my appearance, asking if I was dating someone. I said it was none of her business. She started crying, saying I was rude. I told her she should thank me for being civil and listening to her. After what she did, she shouldn't be allowed in my house. Despite that, I remained polite and entertained her. She held my hands and kept apologizing. I told her crying and begging meant nothing to me now. I used to love her, but I've moved on. She left after I became cold toward her pleas. A few days later, her mother called, asking to meet urgently. I agreed, and over coffee the next day, she apologized for Anna. I hugged her and said it wasn't her fault. She didn't need to say sorry. Unlike Anna, she had always been sweet to me, even during the divorce, and didn't speak badly about me. She asked me if I could get back together with Anna because she felt Anna was really sorry for what she did. She explained that Anna was constantly crying and falling into depression. She was worried that Anna might even become suicidal because she lost all her savings, part of her monthly salary, and some valuable jewelry pieces, which I had mentioned before. I didn't know Anna had lost her savings. Anna was always saving, and I'm sure she had at least $100,000. Losing such a large amount of money can affect anyone's mental health. I questioned how getting back together would help Anna deal with the depression from losing money. She said that Anna truly loved me, and even in her lowest moments, having me in her life could bring her some happiness. To be honest, I did feel sorry for Anna. I even briefly considered getting back together, but that feeling didn't last long. I quickly returned to my decision not to take her back. I told her I couldn't do it. I didn't love her anymore. It turned into a cycle of tears and pleas to help her daughter avoid depression. I stood firm on my decision and suggested taking Anna to therapy. She needed counseling more than a husband. My ex-mother-in-law was disappointed that I declined her request, but understood my perspective. There was one more thing that would have upset Anna more, and that was my investment journey. I followed some genuine finance YouTubers who helped me understand personal finance and investing on a broader level. This knowledge greatly assisted in building my portfolio, and guess what? I'm already making a good profit. I've ventured into the stock and bond markets too. However, I'm still unsure about crypto trading and don't want to step into unfamiliar territory. I'm taking things at a steady pace, learning one thing at a time. Understanding the stock market has reinforced my belief that making money takes time, patience, and courage. I'm hoping to come out of this stronger before thinking about dating again. I still don't feel ready for it. Second story. I'm a 37-year-old guy, and I've been married to Judy, who's 32, for 2.5 years. It's tough to pinpoint a specific moment that defines everything, but things took a bad turn after a frustrating phone call. I was in the living room catching up on football highlights I missed when Judy's phone started ringing, annoyingly interrupting the game. Fed up with the ringtone cutting into the commentary, I brought her phone to the kitchen, asking her to answer it. Then, the phone rang again, and she seemed ready to snap at the caller. Since we both worked in the corporate world, Judy had a rule about keeping our work life separate from our home life. She believed it was our responsibility to separate the two and encouraged me to do the same. She avoided work calls on weekends and preferred emails for urgent matters. I expected her to get upset, but she stayed silent, and her expression changed. It wasn't until dinner that she shared what the call was about. "They are transferring out of state," she said. "Transfer? Why? Where?" I asked, realizing the situation. "I told you about the company's expansion. The board wants to transfer people to the new site to monitor branch development," she explained. I understood how transfers usually worked, often without external commitment. Being married, she wouldn't be considered for a transfer unless she requested it. I asked if she applied, and she said no. I suggested rejecting it, but she explained it came with a promotion she'd been working hard for. Judy was ambitious, a quality I admired. For a year, she worked tirelessly for the promotion, volunteering and ensuring her team functioned smoothly. It was finally paying off, although not in the way we expected. Her salary doubled with perks, but I knew it wasn't about the money. She wanted to climb the corporate ladder. "What should I do?" she asked. It wasn't her fault, but she put me in a tough spot. I had two options: tell her to reject the transfer, losing the promotion, or support her pursuit of her hard-earned career advancement. Thinking people make long-distance marriages work, although I hadn't seen many examples, I convinced myself it could be done. Not wanting to hold her back, I told her, "I'm going to support you. Whatever decision you make, we can make it work." Boy, do I regret those words. Her eyes lit up, and I thought I made the right decision. I convinced myself it would work, remembering friends who traveled for business and sustained their marriages. Looking back, she didn't really leave me much of an option to refuse. If I had honestly shared my opinion and asked her not to take the job, she would have considered it. But knowing Judy well, I sensed it would come at a cost, possibly leading to the collapse of our marriage. I didn't want that. I also disliked the idea of her being far away. However, if our marriage hung in the balance, the lesser evil seemed to be letting go. It looked like the only logical decision, and faced with a similar situation again, I'm not sure if I would choose differently. She spent the evening thanking me for being understanding, but I couldn't shake the wave of irritation, realizing my wife had manipulated me into feeling self-conscious so that my decision favored her. I was sure she had baited me. However, it's hard to say. A manager, seeing her excitement after finalizing travel arrangements, and I had a lengthy discussion about making the marriage work. We planned to call every day to stay involved in our daily lives. The idea of cheating never crossed my mind because I believed Judy was too goal-oriented, especially since her company agreed to give her 5 days off every month. "It'll work," she assured me just before boarding the plane. Little did I know that my marriage had ended in that instant. Every long-distance relationship starts the same way. Calls around the clock, even with Bluetooth earphones so we could talk while she worked. For the first 2 months, it seemed to work. We were on the phone more, and I knew more about her life than when I lived with her. Suddenly, it didn't feel like I'd made the wrong decision prioritizing her ambition over my needs. We were in a good place, at least until 2 months ago. Judy called one morning to cancel her trip back to Michigan. Her company's quarterly performance had been below par, and she had to work on recruiting more capable professionals to fill out administrative roles to make her job easier. I didn't mind, as I was on the verge of closing a huge deal that would give me more flexibility in how I worked. The compensation for closing the deal was worth millions. With that, I could be closer to my wife. 5 days were inconsequential when I could be with her as long as I wanted. I kept the deal a secret to surprise her after it was sealed. To make that happen, I needed to be at my best, which meant no distractions of any type. I didn't call her, and she didn't call me. It was the longest we had gone without talking on the phone. We still texted on WhatsApp, but we were both too busy for meaningful conversation. I'm explaining everything because a few days ago, a mutual friend called me callous and manipulative after hearing what happened. If you ask me, I'm neither of those things. I consider myself a wounded person, which is why I'm here recounting everything between myself and Judy. Anyway, back to the story. The big deal came through, ensuring my family's financial security for life. It was a game changer, making me part of the elite 10% of America in terms of wealth. That night, while waiting for confirmation, I resisted the temptation to call her. I wanted to tell her about the past week and how our lives would change. Judy's biggest dream was a trip to Paris. Instead of calling her, I planned our vacation there: ticket, hotel, food, places to visit. I had everything sorted out and was going to break the news together, all at once. I scrolled through my WhatsApp and landed on her story. She was hugging this guy, Henry. Tall, olive skin, brown hair, blue eyes. He looked no younger than 35. He was the first person employed when she started working. He was from the area, knew about the job, and she needed his expertise. Underneath the picture, she captioned, "Dark times reveal angels." I should have suspected something was wrong. I think I did because I held off from telling her that the deal came through when it did. Instead, I took the next available flight I could find to California to see her. As you may have already guessed, she was having an affair with Henry. I phoned Judy's workplace in Michigan to find out where she was, since I planned a surprise visit. Luckily, the receptionist who answered was a mutual friend, so convincing her not to tell Judy was easy. Throughout the flight, I imagined scenarios of how Judy might react. After sharing news of the deal, I went straight to her branch from the airport, hoping to have dinner with her to break the news. However, I learned she hadn't reported to work that day, so I had to Uber myself to the given address. I wondered why the branch receptionist was surprised to find that Judy was married, but I didn't press, since I knew Judy liked to keep her life private. After climbing 4 flights of stairs, I arrived at her door with a bouquet of flowers behind my back. Right before knocking, I heard Judy moan, "Keep going, keep going." It made me sick. Just 5.5 months away and she cheated. Rage surged, but I tried to stay composed. I left her apartment and drove back to her office to instruct the receptionist not to mention my visit, even tipping her $100. I stayed in a hotel close to her apartment to keep a close watch. Over the week, I discreetly followed her with a rental car, and she didn't suspect a thing. She moved between work, yoga, and her apartment, making it easy to track her. This is how I found out she spent a lot of time with Henry, and it wasn't hard to deduce he was the one she was cheating with. I called and messaged her during this time, but she used work as an excuse and begged me to give her space to get her professional life in order. At that moment, I decided not to let myself be played by her anymore. I drafted divorce letters and waited for her return with Henry. It seemed like all they did was have closeness. Upon arriving at her door, I heard nothing but moans, grunts, and groans. I picked the lock, tiptoed to her bedroom with my phone, recording everything. As disgusting as it was to watch, I recorded a full minute of their relationships before revealing myself. In that moment, while she scrambled for clothes, I felt powerful. Seeing her anguish when I threatened to share the video with her colleagues and family justified my decision to end things. She begged for forgiveness, saying she'd resign and go to therapy, but I was disgusted by her actions, unable to entertain her pleas. She said she resigned and dropped off signed divorce papers yesterday, but I still sent the video to her parents. I want them to see the kind of person their child became. Some comments suggested she checked out of the relationship when she took the job. She had been wanting this for a while, and probably cheating on you for a while as well. She manipulated you into agreeing to take the job, practically forcing you into saying yes. Huge, life-changing decisions like that will have a drastic impact on the family. Update. My wife got moved to a different state to oversee the opening of her company's new branch. While there, she started a relationship with a coworker. I found out about it during a surprise visit after our divorce. I took some time to sort myself out, and for a bit, I was occupied enough to not dwell on the whole situation. I went on vacation to the Dominican Republic for a week, which was pretty awesome. One evening, I got a Reddit notification about a post. When I wrote it, I mainly wanted to vent my anger, irritation, disgust, and rage. Surprisingly, it gained a lot of attention. Reading through the comments, one post stood out. Someone shared a similar experience, mentioning feeling miserable for not taking revenge to the extent needed to satisfy their spirit. It might sound strange, and it was definitely an unpopular opinion, as many people, judging by their comments, were content with me just exposing her infidelity to her parents and getting her fired without going further. It was somewhat satisfying to see her relationship with her parents fall apart after the video, but other than that, it seemed like I hadn't accomplished much. Last I heard, she was in a motel working at a night bar, fittingly ironic for the cheater she is. About 3 weeks after returning from the Dominican Republic, she showed up at my door, begging me to forgive her and take her back. It was amusing to watch. She seemed like all she did was cry in her spare time, bloodshot, swollen, and puffy eyes. Whether it was from crying or dealing with some issues, I didn't care. In fact, I realized there wasn't much I could do to her. She was already an emotional wreck. I decided to shift my focus to the guy she cheated on me with, Henry. I let her in, and she probably thought I was reconsidering the divorce because she immediately started explaining herself, thinking I hadn't gone through with it. She even claimed to have lost her parents' respect and that my actions made her regret what she did. I posed a test question, something I knew she'd fail, just to be sure I wasn't seen as callous or wicked for having a justified motive. I looked her in the eye and asked how many times it happened. You'd expect her to learn from the experience and regain some dignity by telling the truth, but she said once, swearing it was the truth. According to her, running a failing business, with expenses 3 times more than revenue, became a burden. She didn't want to burden me further, thinking she already asked too much by pursuing her ambition. I wasn't bothered by her excuses. What stunned me was how effortlessly she could lie to my face. It was hard to believe our entire relationship had any truth to it after that. My dad always thought it was almost impossible to look someone in the eye and lie. Well, he was way off. Honestly, I wasn't sure how many times they got together, but I had a sense of when it started, and it definitely wasn't just once. I might have doubted her lies if I hadn't followed her for the first 2 weeks in Michigan, and on the day I arrived, she was making quite a scene in her room. Her obsession with privacy didn't matter much then, but I kept my cool and didn't let on that I knew. What about Henry? Who knows? He's probably still in Michigan with his wife. Imagine my surprise when I found out Henry was married. Despite the frustration, I stayed calm. I saw an opportunity to extend my revenge to hurt not only her, but also Henry. There was no way he'd walk away without facing the consequences. I didn't need a mirror to know my acting skills weren't Oscar-worthy, but the way she eagerly spilled everything, including lies about how Henry manipulated her, made me sure she was unsuspecting. I was baiting her. After telling her to give me time to think, I ushered her out and immediately sent the video to everyone who knew her, including her receptionist friend at the office. First, I booked a ticket to Michigan to use the information Judy gave me about Henry's marriage, but I planned to damage him where it hurts. I rented a studio apartment close to him, watching from a distance, waiting for the videos of his escapades with my ex-wife to drop. Meanwhile, I observed his wife, Annie. She was gorgeous, with flowing blonde hair, stormy gray eyes, and a scary smile. Although my initial plan was to bait her into a compromising situation, I had a change of heart. But I know what you're thinking. Aside from the money, I'm a pretty decent-looking guy. Decent enough to be prom king? Anyway, Annie was a kind and genuinely caring person. I was particularly surprised by her honesty. We went from greeting by the roadside to having coffee over an accidental bump, and I orchestrated it over coffee. I learned a lot about her, and for some days, I forgot why I was in Michigan in the first place. It was one of those friendships that was just easy to keep. I even started seeing less of Henry for a while, thinking the plan didn't go as I wanted. Apparently, he'd been fired and spent all his time looking for a new job, trying not to raise suspicion from Amy. During our discussions, I learned Henry was an immigrant who came to the United States on a student visa. Amy also told me about her marital issues. She explained how her husband barely touched her and barely paid her any mind until about 2 months ago when things suddenly changed. What she didn't know was that she provided enough information to ruin Henry's story. They hadn't been married for 3 years, meaning Harry wasn't a citizen, even if he had applied for the green card. I needed Amy to turn on her husband, so I told her the truth about everything. At first, she was mad at me for lying, but she soon got over it. I showed her the video and explained how it haunted my dreams, knowing they were both going about their miserable lives, not justifiably affected by their actions. Luckily, it didn't take much to convince Amy. In the next hour, we planned how she would confront Henry. I wasn't there to witness the drama, but I made sure he knew I was behind everything bad happening to him. Last I heard, he was getting deported to wherever he came from. Honestly, now I can say I feel satisfied.
Story 3.
Before the unraveling that transformed my life, my days were defined by simplicity. I grew up in a small town where summers were spent with my friends playing pickup games and winters involved skating on frozen ponds. College shifted that routine into a fast-paced blur of classes, parties, and ambitious dreams. It was during this transformative time that I met Lee, a radiant, confident young woman who captured my attention from the moment I laid eyes on her. We connected over shared study sessions and spontaneous conversations, gradually intertwining our lives until the thought of separation seemed impossible. Our connection matured, filled with equal parts affection and shared challenges. Marriage followed soon after graduation, a seamless step forward. Life had its pressures, but we found a rhythm that worked. I balanced my role as a government contractor with creative side projects, while Lee climbed the ladder in public relations. Our twin daughters, Betsy and Linda, became the focal point of our days, solidifying our bond as parents. One ordinary evening, my quiet world shifted. I stayed up late, engrossed in a series of YouTube videos on my laptop. To the right, an assortment of cued clips awaited autoplay. I watched a highlight reel featuring one of my favorite basketball stars, Larry Big Al Johnson, who had a reputation for stunning last-second plays. His long, blonde hair, swept back in a ponytail, gave him a charismatic presence, akin to a movie idol. Big Al had been part of my college memories, a familiar face on campus, and later a pro drafted by the Wizards, the local team I followed closely. Though he had retired 3 years ago to become a sports presenter, his legacy was a mix of admiration and nostalgia for me. The next video had nothing to do with basketball. It was a news clip of Big Al dancing sensually with a stunning blonde in a Miami club, my wife Lee. The clip ended with them in a deep kiss. It had been filmed an hour ago and just posted under the headline, Big Al, Another Conquest. I downloaded it and called Lee, but she didn't answer. She was supposedly at a work conference in Miami, along with Bart Kovach, a friend of mine. I called Bart, and he answered immediately. Bart, it's Marty. Do you know where Lee is right now? I asked. There was a brief pause before Bart replied, Marty, this is bad. She's with Big Al. Bart, I need details. This video is going viral, and by morning, everyone, including my kids, will have seen it. Has she been with him this whole time? I pressed. They've been here for 3 days and are leaving tomorrow. They hit it off right after we arrived, probably reconnecting from college. She attends the meetings during the day, but she hasn't been staying in her room at night. I'm really sorry, Marty, Bart said. Will you see her in the morning? I asked. She's supposed to catch a flight. I'll see if she shows up, but I doubt she will, Bart replied. If she plans on coming home, tell her not to, I said firmly. I'll let her know if she asks, Bart said. Thanks, Bart. Goodbye. Lee and I met in college during our junior year in a math class. On the first day, I noticed her sketching alone, surrounded by shy guys. I took the seat next to her. She looked up, smirked, and said, Smart choice. I introduced myself. I'm Lee Moore. I'm Lee Martin, she replied, smiling. If we get married, no need to change monograms. We laughed as class began. After class, we walked to the student union. She had striking green eyes, blonde hair, and an easy smile. She joked about being surprised no one sat beside her and mentioned usually having to fend guys off. I have a boyfriend, though, she added, cutting off any ideas. We met twice a week for class, and one day I asked her for help with a problem. She agreed to tutor me at a diner on Noyes Street, setting boundaries due to her boyfriend. Deal, I said, grateful. During our study sessions at the diner, I got to know Lee much better. Our conversations naturally drifted beyond math, and we quickly found a connection. One day, while our table was cluttered with textbooks, a tall, broad-shouldered man approached. Lee glanced up and greeted him with her radiant smile. Marty, this is my boyfriend, Rashad. Rashad, meet Marty from my math class, she said. I stood up and extended my hand. Rashad, who was black, stood about 5'8" inches with a medium build, weighing around 220 pounds. He shook my hand firmly and sat down next to Lee. We put our books aside as Rashad looked at me and asked, So, what brings you to this math class with Lee and the other nerds? I need an advanced math course for my chemistry major, I explained. It's also useful for programming. The three of us started chatting about why different majors often require seemingly unrelated courses. The conversation was lively, and I quickly realized Rashad was sharp and engaging. So what are you studying? I asked him. Physical training, Rashad replied. I play hockey, but my backup plan is to teach high school. Ideally, I'd like to become a PE teacher. Good plan, I said. Better than mine. Chemists and programmers do get hired, but I'm not quite sure by whom yet. Rashad chuckled. And what about you, Lee? I'm studying business, she said, a confident smile crossing her face. I like the idea of making money. As the semester went on, I spent more time with Lee. I had an off-campus apartment and invited her and Rashad over for dinner one evening. Rashad brought his neighbor Stephanie, who was gorgeous and had just finished high school. She and I had a casual friends with benefits relationship. The dinner went well. I made fish stew, spinach salad, and we had cookies and ice cream. The women drank wine while Rashad and I had beer. Lee and Rashad left around midnight after we played bridge. All four of us surprisingly enjoyed it. None of us had partnered up before, but it got competitive. Rashad and Stephanie teamed up, while Lee and I were on the other team. Lee had a unique bidding style that I picked up on, and we managed to pull ahead and win. Stephanie stayed the night. She was beautiful and passionate, but we both knew our relationship was just casual. She had a boyfriend back in her hometown. I never asked what he thought about us. That evening turned out to be significant because Lee asked me to join a backup bridge tournament at the Army base. I agreed. Meanwhile, Stephanie somehow got Rashad's phone number, probably at dinner without me noticing. I saw them together 2 days later, walking across campus toward our building. I followed them briefly as they went inside and got in the elevator, which stopped at the 4th floor, where she lived. I wasn't sure what to do. The bridge tournament took place on Friday. 2 days later, I was in my room by the window, reading and watching the activity outside. After a couple of hours, I noticed Rashad leaving through the front door. I decided to walk over to Stephanie's room and knocked. She shouted something before opening the door a moment later. She looked flushed, wearing flip-flops and a tight dress with no bra. "Hey, Steph," I said. "Not now, Marty. I'm not in the mood for company," she replied sharply. Then her expression shifted. "Oh, Marty, you saw it, didn't you?" "Yeah," I admitted. She gave a wry smile. "Well, did you enjoy the show? It might seem wrong on Shad's part, but I don't feel bad. I actually feel great." "Sorry," I said, feeling awkward. "Don't worry about it. I'm figuring out what to do next," she continued. "Just don't mess things up between Lee and Rashad. He's just fun for me like you are. Honestly, not even as much as you. If you were in Lee's shoes, would you want to know if Rashad messed up?" "Yes," I said. "Me too," she replied. The bridge tournament turned out to be a lot of fun. The Army team was impressive at cards, but Lee and I managed to place third out of 20 teams. Not bad at all. Lee mentioned we'd earned points, though I wasn't sure what that meant. As we walked to my car, she suddenly asked, "Why didn't you tell me about Rashad and Steph?" I couldn't decide whether I should. "How did you find out?" I asked. "Steph told Rashad that you knew. He brought it up," she explained. "I'm sorry. I got curious and ended up seeing them." "What did they say?" Lee asked. "We're taking a break for a few weeks to figure things out," I said. "Oh, okay," she replied. Then she looked at me and said, "Marty, I want you to take me to your place. If you want to, that is." "Oh, I definitely want to," I answered. I drove faster than usual to my apartment. We hurried inside, and once the door closed, Lee kissed me deeply. She pressed her body against mine, and I responded by pressing my arousal against her. She pulled back, grabbed me, and led me to the bedroom. I quickly removed my shirt and pants, including my underwear. Lee was already undressed except for her underwear and sandals. I knelt down and slid her underwear off slowly. Sex with Lee was incredible. I brought her to climax twice, and the third time we finished together. Oh, Marty, oh my God. I believed her. I'd always thought we were meant for each other. I'm average-sized in pants. Maybe a bit more, but I focused on pleasing her, which worked well that night. Lee rested for a bit, then started exciting me again. I returned the favor, and it worked perfectly. She climaxed strongly, and I followed soon after. We lay there for 20 minutes, gently caressing each other. I got up to use the bathroom. She followed. "Shower?" she asked in a sultry voice. We took a long shower where I pressed her against the smooth wall and made love to her. Afterward, we cleaned up and returned to bed, eventually falling asleep. The next morning, I got up to brush my teeth, and Lee came in just as I was finishing. I handed her a spare toothbrush. Once we both took care of my morning breath, we addressed my morning arousal. During breakfast, Lee asked, "Am I as good as Stephanie? Am I as good as Shad?" We looked at each other, then she smirked. "He's bigger, but you're better. Steph is great, but you're amazing." From that day forward, we were together. Lee practically moved in with me. Rashad was against it, but there wasn't much he could do. He soon found someone else and often spent time with Stephanie, too. In his senior year, Big Al moved into our building on the 4th floor. Sometimes I saw him with Stephanie. He didn't live with her, but they were frequently spotted coming and going together. We exchanged greetings until one evening Steph invited us over for dessert. Big Al was there. It was a pleasant evening, and I found Big Al polite, intelligent, and maybe overly attentive to Lee. Perhaps Steph noticed too, as we weren't invited over again. Lee and I got married at 20. Right after college, I started working as a programmer for the government at the Pentagon. Lee got a job at a public relations firm, focusing on advertising for corporations aiming to influence government officials, senators, congressmen, and agency reps. I inherited a house from my grandfather, located close to work. The lease had ended, so we moved in. The house had 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, a garage converted into a living space, and a finished basement, which needed some work. I tackled that project with the help of a high school friend who ran a construction business in Virginia. Lee became pregnant, and at 22, we welcomed twin daughters, Betsy and Linda. Not identical, but quite a handful. Lee took a year off, and I reduced my work hours to give the twins the care they needed. By the end of that year, I switched to contractor status, allowing me to work from home. Lee returned to work part-time and went full-time when the girls turned 4. By then, I had established a solid daily routine with them, and my contractor work was thriving. I earned more, though without benefits. Lee's job grew increasingly demanding, mostly because she allowed it to. She was ambitious and accomplished a lot. My work was more creative. Some of it was for the government, while some was my own. I had 2 promising system ideas that I'd been refining for a while. Lee made good money. When the girls were 13 and in elementary school, I was 35 and in good shape. I jogged and played table tennis, which might not sound challenging, but try it against skilled players. Before seeing the video of Lee and Big Al, I would have said our bed life was satisfying, at least for me. However, after 15 years together, while I didn't think we were stagnant, I suspected Lee did. I looked up Big Al's address, just 3 miles north of us. I wondered if what I saw in Miami was recent or had been going on for a while. I also had more questions. I asked the girls to do DNA swabs, and I did one myself. This was the day after I told them about the YouTube video. I needed to protect them from any surprises at school. It was Friday, and they had school with tests and group activities. At 10 a.m., Lee called. I saw it was her and let it go to voicemail. "Marty, pick up. Please, Marty. I love you. I made a mistake. I'll be home this afternoon." "Oh, God." Her sobs were audible. One of the house improvements I made was an electronic entry system, so I changed the code. The converted garage stood unused but was fully furnished. I moved Lee's clothes and essentials there. My mother and Lee's mother both called, wanting to know what I planned to do. I didn't know and said as much. I logged into Lee's Gmail and went through a month of emails, old and recent. I checked the trash folder, no messages from Big Al. There were some work-related emails and a few about the conference, with hints from a coworker who was also headed to Miami. Lee's flight was due at noon. I ignored her calls and asked a friend at the airport to keep an eye on arrivals. He saw Lee exit with her work group looking around. He discreetly filmed her on his phone as she collected her luggage and lingered by the exit. 5 minutes later, Big Al appeared, also scanning the area and heading for the baggage claim. My friend followed him. Lee, holding her suitcase, noticed Big Al, turned, and walked away. Big Al retrieved his suitcase and went outside. Lee was waiting for a cab when Big Al approached her and spoke. She shook her head. A taxi arrived and the dispatcher directed both into it. My friend sent me the video. 20 minutes later, a taxi pulled up in front of the house. Only Lee stepped out, looking frantic when she realized her code no longer worked. She knocked and rang the doorbell repeatedly. I opened the door and she burst into tears. "I'm so sorry, Marty. I never imagined things would turn into such a mess," she sobbed. "You don't live here anymore, Lee. Your things are in the garage. Until you find a place, maybe you should stay with Al," I said coldly. "Oh, Marty, there's nothing between us. I love you," she pleaded. "You publicly humiliated me and made me a laughingstock. The girls at school, who knows what they're going through because of this? You're cruel. Get out of my sight." Her face fell as she stumbled backward. She sat down on a lawn chair and cried. Our neighbor, Mrs. Cunningham, noticed and came over to talk to her. After their conversation, Lee went to Mrs. Cunningham's house. I called Lee's mother and let her know Lee was nearby and could use some support. Ellen, her mother, sounded indifferent, but agreed to come by in an hour. I sat in the kitchen sipping coffee, trying to process everything. The events of the night before felt like a blur. I called an attorney I knew who referred me to family law attorney Joan Ellis. I scheduled an appointment for Monday, but 30 minutes later, Miss Ellis called me back. "Mr. Martin, this is Joan Ellis. You set an appointment for Monday, correct? I'm calling because of your wife and the basketball player?" "Yes, but how did you know? The video doesn't mention her name," I said, surprised. "A reporter uncovered it. Big Al is big news here, especially when it comes to gossip. I thought it would be best not to wait until Monday. Can you come tomorrow morning at 10? "Yes, 10 works," I replied. "Please write a brief history of your relationship with your wife and any interactions with Mr. Johnson, if any. I'll also need financial statements, if possible," she instructed. We ended the call, and she advised against making any rash decisions. I hung up, and my phone rang again. Without thinking, I answered. It was Big Al. "Marty, I called to apologize," he said. "Go to hell. I'll do everything I can to ruin your life, you idiot," I snapped. "Listen, it's not just me. It's her, too. It just happened," he said, trying to defend himself. "I had a happy marriage before she went to Miami. We have 2 kids. You're a fool. If you see me, you better run." I said it calmly, with no raised voice or emphasis. There was a pause, and he hung up. Now I had his number. I logged into our shared phone account and checked Lee's call history. I saw Al's number appear only after she reached Miami, just twice. I didn't have access to today's calls. I assumed their meeting was unplanned. I checked Wiz's schedule. They'd had a game in Miami on Wednesday where Big Al was the MC, confirming he was there for work. The doorbell rang. My parents and Lee's parents were outside. Lee was gone. I let them in and offered drinks, which they declined. They sat down while I stood at the living room entrance. "Well?" I prompted. My mom, Lacey, spoke up. "We had a quick talk outside. We came to see how you're holding up." I sat there, quietly sobbing, my grief evident. When I finally straightened up and looked at my mom, she later said my expression was so full of devastation and pain that she couldn't fathom how it could ever be healed. My dad spoke up. "Is there any chance you'd be willing to talk to Lee? She asked us to check." "Why?" I replied bitterly. "Nothing she says will matter. She destroyed our family, and it wasn't just a one-time thing. She didn't even try to hide it from her coworkers, and now everyone knows." Ellen, Lee's mother, intervened. "I know she made a terrible mistake, Marty. A huge one. And she realizes that. But you have your daughters, and you and Lee have shared so many years together. Maybe it's worth trying to save if you can." "I don't see her as my wife anymore, Ellen. And I never will again. She's just the mother of my children now." Ellen's eyes softened with empathy. "You're hurting, Marty. Your pride is deeply wounded. You need time to move past that. Your marriage can't end because of just a few days." "Ellen, I care about you and respect you, but what your daughter did is beyond repair. Please, don't ask me to consider reconciliation. It's not going to happen," I said firmly. She raised her hands in a silent gesture. I added, "All of you should start thinking about what life will look like after the divorce, or once it's official." My mom started crying. "Just wait a few days, Marty, just a few. Your dad and I can take the girls for the weekend. We'll take them to the lake," I agreed. Just then, the girls arrived home from school and knocked because the code had changed. They were surprised to see their grandparents. They wanted to tell me about their day. "It wasn't all that bad," I said. Betsy was close friends with Sharon Davis, who asked her about the video. Betsy admitted she hadn't seen it, but was aware of it. Sharon wanted to know if her parents were getting a divorce. Betsy said she didn't know. Linda didn't know either, but I did. "We'll handle this later," I said. They weren't overly emotional. Linda asked, "Where's Mom?" "She's next door," Ellen replied. "Your grandparents need to talk to your dad, but I think you girls should pack for the weekend. You'll be staying with us and we'll take you to the lake." They were worried, but wanted to see Lee. We sent them to pack. I was against them seeing Lee, but the others thought it was necessary. I said she could see the girls on the porch, I insisted. After they packed, Ellen went to get Lee. Their suitcases were put in the car and they waited on the porch with their grandparents. Lee and Ellen approached. The girls didn't run to her but stood waiting. From my bedroom window on the second floor, I could see and hear everything. Lee knelt in front of them and they all hugged. "Mom?" Linda asked with a trembling voice. "What did you do? How could you be with that man?" She sobbed through the question. "I made a terrible mistake," Lee whispered. "I need to figure out why. But I love you girls and your dad very much." Betsy wasn't convinced. She was the tougher one. "If you loved Dad, you couldn't have done this. And it's all over the video. How could you?" she cried, tears streaming down her face. Lee started crying too. "I'm so sorry. It was a terrible mistake." Lee hugged Linda while Betsy pushed her away. Lee stood up and ran to her father's car. My parents put the girls in their van and everyone went their separate ways. I sat on my bed, stunned and heartbroken. Then anger surged within me. I felt rage building and started shouting and thrashing. I went down to the basement and pounded on the heavy bag, imagining every hit landing on Larry or Lee. My hands turned sore and bruised by the time I was done. I resolved that both of them would face consequences. After tending to my injured hands, I had a drink and went to bed. It took a while to fall asleep, but I finally did. The next morning, I went for an intense, long run. Then I gathered my financial documents and went to the lawyer's office. Joan Ellis was a slender woman in her 40s with dark hair and eyes, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt. We shook hands. "Sorry for the casual look. It's Saturday, and I was doing yard work," she said. "No problem. You look fine," I replied. She smiled. "Let's head to the conference room," she said, leading the way. I began, "Miss Ellis, I want to understand my options for divorcing my wife." "I can explain that, but are you sure you want a divorce? It's a difficult path and you have 2 kids, right?" she asked. "Yes, twin girls, 13 years old, and I want custody," I said firmly. "Let's circle back to whether you really want to end your marriage. Has something like Miami happened before, or is this a first?" she probed. "I don't think she's done this before, but I can't be certain," I answered. "So you can't accept it if it's true?" she asked. "No, I said without hesitation. Okay, let's talk about finances, Joan said. We discussed our incomes and roles with the children. Joan was pleased that the house belonged to me before marriage and that the girls had always lived there. She felt our work schedules and my role as a stay-at-home parent would likely favor me in custody proceedings, though nothing was guaranteed. I made about the same amount as Lee, but my income was less consistent. Joan thought neither of us would be required to pay child support. The non-custodial parent will be obligated to pay child support, she clarified. I asked how soon the divorce process could begin. Maybe a week to draft and file the paperwork, she estimated. I think you should wait a bit longer. People change their minds, and you might be ordered to attend counseling, she advised. Is there any way to avoid that? I don't want to talk to her one-on-one, I said. You'll need to have some conversations, but we can try to minimize them, she replied. She noticed my bandaged hands. What happened? She asked. I got angry last night and took it out on the heavy bag. Forgot my gloves, I admitted. At least you didn't confront Mr. Johnson or your wife, she remarked. Speaking of him, is there any way to sue him? He should pay, I said, my tone hardening. There's no option to sue for infidelity or alienation of affection in this state or in Florida, Joan explained. He should pay, I muttered, my voice steady, which seemed to unnerve Joan. I'll see what can be done, but please, no violence, she cautioned. No promises. He has to face consequences. I won't sleep if he walks away without any, I replied. Mr. Martin, I need to tell you that while our discussions are confidential, if I believe you're planning a violent act, I may need to report it, she said. Or maybe not, I said. Joan, you'll never have that kind of knowledge, I assured her. Thanks for saying that, she said, sounding relieved. I signed an agreement with her and paid the fee, asking her to have the documents ready as soon as possible. When I got home, it was already noon, and my father, Leland, called. Hello? How are you holding up today? He asked. I'm fine. I just got back from seeing a lawyer, I replied. Oh, moving fast. What did they say? He asked, a note of concern in his voice. We discussed what a divorce would look like, I said bluntly. Marty, you need to take a step back. Don't rush this. It's a major decision and you shouldn't make it hastily, he cautioned. Dad, when Lee let that guy touch her, she was already done in my mind. The fact that it happened more than once just makes it worse. But once was enough, I said, my tone hardening. Your mother thinks she hurt you too deeply for any chance of recovery. I think she might be right, but still I want you to slow down and give Lee a chance to explain, he said, his voice softening. What could she possibly say that would change anything? I asked. There was a pause before he admitted, okay, I can't think of anything. Exactly my point, I said. We talked about how the girls were feeling. Linda was sad and withdrawn, while Betsy was angry and struggling to keep her emotions in check. My mom was working with them, reassuring them that they weren't losing their parents and that both of us would still be there for them. We ended the call. The house phone rang with no caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. It was Lee. Marty, if you're there, please pick up. I need to talk to you. Marty, I need this. Please, I know I messed up. You're the only one I've ever been able to talk to about serious things. Am I going to lose you? No, please. I know you're angry and confused. I'm so sorry. She started crying before hanging up. As she spoke, I found myself crying too. I went downstairs again, this time putting on gloves before hitting the bag. Even with gloves, it hurt. I punched and kicked the bag until I was exhausted. Afterward, I took a shower. Some guys might drink in a situation like this, but I preferred to run or use the punching bag. I began thinking about how to deal with Larry. One thing that kept coming to mind was a tool I had found. I owned 2 registered pistols, a .45 caliber revolver and a .40 caliber S and W pistol. But one day, while jogging, I noticed something shiny in the tall grass. It was a Taurus .380 self-loading pistol. I took it home. It was loaded and in working condition, though the serial number had been removed, making it illegal. I cleaned it and once tested it at a shooting range. It was accurate. I considered the idea of using the tool on Larry, but quickly pushed those thoughts aside. I had my girls, and I couldn't risk ending up in prison because of him. It wasn't the right time to confront Lee. I knew eventually we'd have to talk, but the idea of seeing her now made me feel sick. Alone in the house, a wave of despair washed over me. It felt like a heavy blanket suffocating me, pinning me to the couch. Breathing became difficult and suddenly panic set in. I jumped up knowing I needed to move and went for a fast walk. My path led me by Larry's house. I didn't linger, but noted that security seemed minimal. The house was large and new, close to the street, with a basketball hoop in the driveway. No car was in sight, but there was a large garage in the back. I walked by, made a loop, and passed again, discreetly taking a few photos with my phone. I then walked past Lee's parents' house further north. Their cars were parked out front, and Lee's car was still in our garage. I hurried to a store, bought a prepaid cell phone and a Diet Pepsi, and then returned home. It was 3 p.m. on a Saturday. I made a sandwich, though I only managed to eat a few bites. The moment I stopped moving, the despair crept back. I took out the .380 pistol and drove out of town to a friend's property with an open shooting range. No one was there. He and his family were in Florida. I shot through 2 boxes of ammo. The pistol was cheap but reliable, slightly heavier than a high-end model. On my way back, I stopped at a pharmacy and picked up 2 neoprene thigh wraps. Back at home, I fashioned a body holster to hold the .380 at my lower back. I tested running with it and found it worked well. My phone had been off all day, and I hadn't checked emails. When I turned it on, there were 11 voicemails, around 20 texts from family, colleagues, and friends, and countless emails. The voicemails were from Lee, Ellen, and my mom, all saying similar things. Please contact us. We need to talk. The texts echoed the same, including some from my father and 2 recent ones from Lee's father, Milt. Milt's messages stood out from the rest. In the first, he apologized for Lee's actions and expressed regret for not raising a more responsible daughter. In the second, he asked if I wanted to meet and talk privately, away from the women. I called him, but it went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message, but he called back 3 minutes later. Marty, I needed a walk to clear my head. I saw you called. What's going on? He asked. Milt, can we meet somewhere? How about Raymond Park near Hopscourt? I suggested. Sure, I can be there in about 30 minutes, he agreed. I put on jeans and slipped my .380 into my pocket, just in case I encountered Larry, who lived half a mile from the park. I drove for 10 minutes and walked past Larry's house on the way. When I arrived, Milt was already there. The park was small and quiet, with only a few people around. We shook hands and sat on a bench near the edge of the court. Milt spoke first. I wanted to check on you. Ellen and your mom told me you weren't doing well. I'm not, Milt. I feel worse than I ever have, I admitted. I understand. When my mom died, it took me a year to feel somewhat normal again. I just worked through it day by day. You should try to do the same, he said gently. It's easy to say, but hard to do. And it's only been a day, I replied. For what it's worth, Lee isn't holding up well either. She hasn't eaten since she came to our house and has barely spoken. We're thinking of calling for help. Honestly, you look better than she does, Milt said. She's dealing with guilt. I don't have that, I said flatly. I'm sorry, Marty, but the girls need her. They need their mother. I don't understand why she's so shocked by this fallout. She did everything openly. Did she really think no one would find out? That I wouldn't know? It's ridiculous. Even without YouTube, one of her coworkers or friends would have mentioned it eventually, I said, frustration seeping into my voice. I don't think she was thinking clearly, Milt said thoughtfully. She was away from home, caught up in being pursued by a celebrity. I think she let emotions take over when she would normally suppress them. You're kind to think that, Milt. But I believe she's had feelings for Larry since college and thought she could have both. What are you planning to do? He asked. I'm probably going to divorce her. I can't think about her without getting angry. I just hope I don't end up sick over this, I said. I know people are advising you to wait before making any big decisions. But honestly, I don't see how you could return to a normal life with her, Milt said, his voice heavy. Exactly. It's over. I'll wait, but not for long, I replied. Make sure she's prepared. If she's as bad as you say, I'll do what I can to help, Milt offered. We parted ways. As I walked back to my car, parked on a nearby street, I saw Larry dribbling a basketball up the cross street toward the park. My hand moved to my tool. Milt, driving past, saw him and honked. Larry got startled, lost the ball, and chased after it without looking, like an idiot. It wasn't Milt who ran over him. A car coming from the opposite direction, blocked by Milt's, struck him. A big SUV. Before the driver could stop, Larry went over the hood and windshield, landing on the street. Milt kept driving. I ran over to Larry, who was still alive but barely conscious. The SUV driver rushed over, yelling, I already called emergency. The hospital was only about 4 blocks away. Larry recognized me and tried to speak, but no words came out. I watched as he faded. Paramedics arrived within 2 minutes, doing everything they could, but it was too late. Big Al was gone. I felt a mix of relief and betrayal. The police showed up, and I was anxious since the tool I had was illegal, even though I had a concealed carry permit. I answered their questions, gave my name and address, and they let me go. The elderly SUV driver was shaken, and I told him and the police that it wasn't his fault. Larry had just run into the street. An hour later, I drove home, disposed of the .380, and went to Milt's. Lee was there, but I needed to speak to Milt about the accident. Ellen opened the door, noticing my tense expression. "Marty, what's wrong?" she asked. "I need to see Milt," I replied. "Milt," she called out, and he came down. I motioned for him to step outside. "Big Al is dead," I said. Milt's eyes widened. "Did you liquidate him? I saw the tool, Marty." "No, he was shot by a car after you honked. He chased a ball into the street. I saw him die." Milt looked shocked. "That's an accident. God works in mysterious ways," he said. I managed a grim smile. "One of you, either you or Ellen, should tell Lee that her lover is gone." "He wasn't her lover," Milt said defensively. "But we'll tell her. It'll be on the news soon." "How is she doing?" I asked. "She's not well. She's shattered," Milt replied, his voice heavy. "It's strange," I said. "At first I felt cheated, but now I just feel relieved." "Marty, I want to save my daughter," Milt said, his eyes pleading. "She made a huge mistake, but she deserves a chance. If you can find it in yourself, please help her someday. I know it's a lot to ask." "I need time, Milt. For now, keep her away from me. I'll try to figure things out," I said, my tone firm. "Good job not becoming a butcher," Milt said with a slight smile. We shared a tense laugh and went inside. I drove home and for the first time in days, slept well. The girls called and we talked before bedtime. Sunday was tough. The weather was nice, but I had nothing to distract me from my broken marriage. Despite Milt's words, I knew there was no future for Lee and me. This truth saddened me, but it was reality. I went for a long run by the river, then showered and joined my parents and the girls for a picnic. The twins were in better spirits. They had a video call with Lee, who encouraged them, staying strong. My mom said they only talked about school, avoiding Lee's affair and Larry's end of life. Lee told them she'd see them once she felt better. We enjoyed the day, and while the girls were swimming, I shared with my parents that I had witnessed Larry's accident. They were stunned. "You didn't have anything to do with it, did you?" my father asked, eyeing me cautiously. "No, it was purely a coincidence," I assured him. "I was at the park with Milt when Larry ran into the street." "Well, I can't say I'm sorry to hear that," my father muttered. "May the Lord have mercy on him." We changed the subject. On Monday, Joan Ellis called, unaware I'd been there when Larry died. I explained everything, sensing her amazement and slight suspicion. I understood. It sounded strange. She said the divorce papers would be ready by Wednesday and asked when to serve them. "Hold off," I said. "Lee's not in good shape. I promised Milt I'd wait." The girls chose to attend school, even though Larry's end of life and last week's outburst were big news. I managed a half day of work for the Army before picking them up after activities. We had homemade pizza for dinner. It was a pleasant evening, but before bed, they asked, "Will Mom come back?" "I don't think things will be the same," I said honestly. "I can't see us going back to our old life, but your mom and I will always love you." On Tuesday, Milt and Ellen called, asking to meet at Starbucks. With coffee in hand, Milt said he'd contacted a marriage counselor and asked me to try engaging with Lee. "If you file for divorce on infidelity grounds, the court may require counseling," Ellen added. "Fine, but I won't fake it. This might not help her," I said. "We're not asking you to pretend," Ellen replied. "Just take it slow. Listen and talk to Lee. She's terrified after Larry's end of life. We didn't tell her you were there." Our first counseling session was set for Monday at 10 a.m. I arrived on time to avoid waiting with Lee. The counselor, Dr. Sylvia Price, was a warm, welcoming psychologist in her 50s. She led us into her office. Lee and I hadn't spoken until then. She looked pale and nervous. Dr. Price began by explaining her work, including cases involving infidelity. She asked me, "Marty, what's your goal for counseling?" "I want to move forward with my life," I said. "I want to be a good father, but I don't see reconciliation happening." Turning to Lee, Dr. Price asked, "What about your goals?" Lee hesitated. "I want my old life back. Even if it's different, I want to stay married," Dr. Price summarized. Lee attended a conference in Miami, reconnected with a college acquaintance, and it became public. Is that correct? Lee nodded. "Yes. I never thought my actions would come out and affect my family." Dr. Price continued. "Then why go out with Mr. Johnson, knowing he's famous?" Lee sighed. "I thought it would be fun. It wasn't near the hotel, and it was fun. But you knew your coworkers would talk and Marty would find out, Dr. Price said. Lee nodded silently. Dr. Price turned to me. Marty, why do you believe the marriage can't be saved? I looked at Lee. She was the person I trusted most, and she betrayed me so easily and publicly. I've experienced loss before, but this pain is worse. I could never trust her, or anyone, again. Lee began to cry, and Dr. Price asked, How do you feel seeing her so upset? Sad and angry, I admitted. What she did was cruel. Not just to me, but to the kids, too. Even if it wasn't intentional, it was reckless. And for what? 3 nights with someone you were infatuated with back in college, I said, fixing my gaze on Lee. Through her tears, Lee said, I don't know why I did it. Dr. Price interjected. Did you have feelings for him in college? Yes, Lee said quietly. He was handsome and popular. He pursued me, but I was with Marty, so I turned him down. Why did you say yes in Miami? I asked, my voice strained. I had been feeling disconnected for months. We were all so busy. When I saw Larry, he hugged me, and I didn't push him away. Everything happened so fast. I don't fully understand it myself, Lee confessed. I scoffed. We had amazing sex the night before you left. Was that all fake? No, it was real, Lee said, her voice breaking. I felt excited on the flight. I feel awful about everything. She started sobbing again. I felt tears welling up, but anger took over, and I left the room. Dr. Price found me in the outer office. Why don't you step into the men's room for a moment, she suggested. I did and returned 15 minutes later. Lee, now calmer, said softly, I'm sorry, Marty, before leaving. Dr. Price turned to me. Marty, how do you feel about Mr. Johnson's end of life? You were there, weren't you? Yes, I saw him die. I felt relieved. It's dark to say, but I could have done it myself. Someone else did, and that felt like a weight lifted, I said bluntly. Why does this mean the end for you? She asked. I was always devoted to my family. This betrayal is too much to bear. I can't picture trusting anyone again. Lee took that from me. Have you thought about what their time together was like? Dr. Price pressed. Yes. I saw the videos. It was clear how much they wanted each other, I said coldly. How did that make you feel? Betrayed, I said, my voice hard. It wasn't just a meaningless fling. Even if we stayed together, I'd always believe she was thinking of him. I wish I could erase those memories for her, if nothing else. Dr. Price sighed. That's hard to overcome. You truly loved her. I did. That's why it hurts so much. She destroyed me, I said. The session ended with Dr. Price asking me to consider living arrangements if we were to separate.
I was tasked with explaining what happened in Miami, why I was so vulnerable, and outlining how reconciliation with Marty might be possible. Before the Miami trip, I felt disconnected and out of touch with the things I used to enjoy. Work had become monotonous, and family life felt repetitive. This had been going on for months, leaving me with an underlying sense of dissatisfaction. I looked forward to the trip, hoping it would bring some change. One of my colleagues, Brady Bean, had been pestering me since he transferred to our office. I easily brushed him off, treating him as an annoyance, but he was persistent. While he wasn't unattractive and had an upbeat personality, I was never interested. When we realized we were both going to Miami, he saw it as a chance for a fling. I made it clear I wasn't interested, though I couldn't deny that his attention was somewhat flattering. Still, I would never cross that line with him. He wasn't tempting enough, and it was too risky. Everything changed when we arrived at the hotel. Larry appeared. He was undeniably attractive, muscular, smooth, and self-assured. When he hugged me enthusiastically, I was instantly caught off guard. I realized that if he pursued me, I wouldn't resist. He seemed to pick up on that, pulling me aside to ask if Marty was with me. When I said no, he mentioned his hotel room and his stay until Friday. He looked me straight in the eye and said, I want you, and I know you want me. I agreed to have dinner with him, though even now I can't fully understand why I was so willing, like a fool. Marty and I had just had amazing sex the night before I left. I was still feeling its effects, yet being with Larry felt like stepping into another world. I told myself it was only for a few days, far from home with no real consequences. I didn't think about Marty or the fallout. At least, I don't remember considering it. If Larry had been in Virginia, I'm sure I would have said no. But in Miami, I convinced myself it was different. During dinner, it was obvious where the night was heading. We skipped dessert and went straight to his room. Once inside, Larry pulled me close and kissed me, and we quickly undressed. I wasn't thinking about anything except his touch, his body, and the desire between us. There was no build-up. We were too eager. He carried me to the bed and we had sex, intense and relentless. After multiple climaxes, he finished, and I passed out. He woke me up with kisses, and we started again. I missed breakfast with my team the next morning and barely made it to the meeting. I was thoroughly satisfied and suspected my colleagues could tell. Some gave me sidelong glances, but no one said anything directly. I wondered if anyone might contact Marty, but dismissed it. They had no proof, just guesses. The second night was as intense, though by the third night the excitement had waned. Still, we had dinner in his room and spent hours in bed. Larry suggested going out dancing, and I hesitated before agreeing. That's how I ended up on YouTube, dancing with him. When I watched the video later, knowing Marty had seen it, I felt sick. I saw myself the way Marty must have, his devoted wife, publicly showing desire for another man. After dancing, we returned to the hotel and had sex again. The next morning, I had a flight back home. We had one final round before saying goodbye. When I returned to my room to pack, my roommate, Cindy, mentioned the YouTube video, calling it spicy. I was overcome with horror and realized I was finished. At the airport, I saw Bart Kovach, Marty's close friend. He told me that Marty had seen the video and knew I'd spent my nights with Larry. I was stunned. The flight home was miserable. No one spoke to me. When we landed, I didn't expect Marty to pick me up and waited for a taxi. Larry ended up in the same cab. He apologized for the video, saying he hadn't considered the consequences. I didn't want to talk and asked the driver to drop him off first. When I arrived home, I couldn't make myself go inside. When Marty opened the door, the hurt and anger on his face were too much. I turned and ran. Since then, I've been living at my parents' house, mostly in a daze. I tried speaking to my daughters, but Betsy rejected me and I couldn't blame her. Phone calls were easier, though it took me an hour to prepare for each one. I now go to counseling. After the first session, I felt certain my marriage was over, especially after hearing Marty's pain. His anger and grief were overwhelming, and I don't know how I could ever ask for his trust again. I don't deserve it. Larry is dead, liquidated by a car. When my mom told me, I felt immense sorrow. He had asked me to call him during the taxi ride, but I never did. Now I never could. His end of life left an emptiness inside me. I thought if I ever cheated, I would always remember Larry. Now maybe I won't. I can't shake the guilt that if I'd turned him down, he might still be alive. It doesn't make sense, but somehow it does. I'm completely, utterly lost.
Things at home are slowly improving. The twins are struggling with school, but it's manageable. Betsy stays angry, while Linda misses her mother deeply. I suspect Betsy does too, though she hides it well. Each evening, they video call Lee. She seems a bit better on these calls, but it's hard to tell much in such a short time. Our second counseling session was like the first, except we each had a solo session before meeting together. Dr. Price started with, "Have you thought about what could make reconciliation possible?" I sighed. "Yes, but I couldn't think of anything. Sorry." She pressed on. "Would understanding why Lee got involved with Larry help you trust her again? If you knew the cause, could you find a way to prevent it from happening again?" "That's absurd," I said. "She just wanted sex with him and thought she'd get away with it." "That's what she said, right?" "But I don't believe her. Sure, she wanted him, but part of me thinks she wanted to get caught." "Why do you think that?" Dr. Price asked. "Good question. Ask her, Doc, but it doesn't matter. This won't end in reconciliation. You can't overcome a betrayal like this. It wasn't just the act, it was the stupidity of thinking she'd get away with it. That can't be fixed." Dr. Price paused. "If she did want to get caught, could that change anything for you?" "No," I said bitterly. "It would mean she wanted out. Away from me, from our family. Maybe she craved drama or excitement. If Larry were still alive, she'd probably be with him now." When we met together, Lee kept asking for forgiveness. I didn't believe it. Even if her apology was sincere and her actions made sense, I couldn't stay with her. It would be like living next to a ticking bomb, always waiting for it to go off again. By the end of the session, I'd made my decision. I called my lawyer and asked him to file for divorce. There was no other way.
Today, I was served divorce papers. I keep writing in this journal, hoping for future clarity. During this week's counseling, Marty seemed less angry, more resigned. It was clear we were done. I've read about grief stages, and acceptance is one of the last. Marty has accepted our marriage is over, with my affair as the final blow. The divorce papers didn't surprise me. I saw this coming. Now, I need to contact a lawyer. I returned to work this week, and the atmosphere was cold. Everyone knows about my affair and sees me as the woman who broke her family. Even Brady Bean, who once pursued me, has kept his distance. It's his loss. I know he'll probably approach me, assuming I'm vulnerable, but he's wrong. My lawyer suggested I ask for joint custody of the girls. Since Marty owned the house before our marriage, he'll likely stay there, especially as the main parent. The girls might live with us on alternate weeks if I find a place nearby, or maybe we'll switch weekends. It all feels overwhelmingly sad. I told my lawyer I'd admit to the Miami affair and asked him to speed up the process. I don't want anything from Marty. No money or prolonged fights. We can split the savings evenly. It's painful that years of marriage have come to this. Just broken memories. But at least I didn't end up like Larry. I don't feel sorry for him. He shares the blame. He didn't have to choose me, but he did. I'll never understand why. Dr. Price suggested my dancing, overtly strange behavior, and inability to hide the affair might mean I wanted an exciting new life. I don't believe that. She said Marty thought I wanted to be caught, to escape our marriage. Now I'm free, and I hate it. I have no appetite, no interest in Zex. I don't go out and have turned down Brady Bean multiple times without temptation. It would be easy, but I can't do it. I wonder how long this emptiness will last.
The divorce was finalized today. I received primary custody of the twins who will stay in the house. Lee will have them every other weekend, 2 weeks in the summer, and either Thanksgiving or Christmas. They'll probably get double gifts for Christmas. The settlement has been unchanged for 6 months, as Lee already rented an apartment 2 miles away. I invited Milt and Ellen to visit anytime, and they often do. They also see the girls at Lee's on weekends. I haven't dated seriously, but have gone out with a few divorced friends from our circle, sharing dinners or bowling nights. We spent a week at the house without the kids and were intimate. The Zex was good, but I made it clear to them that after what I've been through, there would be no commitment. Everyone knows what happened, so they understand. A few people believe I'll eventually move past my fears, but I doubt it. This is a long journey without an endpoint. The pain of imagining Lee with Larry is still as sharp as ever, though I try not to dwell on it. The twins have adapted. Linda is kind to Lee, but Betsy holds grudges like me, which might be a problem. I've only shared this concern with Ellen, not Lee. Lee and I barely speak. She knows I prefer it that way. Seeing her is too painful. Ellen mentions that Lee has become reclusive, and I rarely see her. Despite living close and sharing social circles, I don't feel sympathy for her and never will. I never understood why she did it, and I doubt she does either. It seemed like a coincidence of events, her vague discontent, the trip to Miami, and meeting Larry, all aligning to destroy our marriage. A year later, Milt Moore played golf on a Saturday with his old friend, Fred Cunningham, an electrical engineer. As they walked from the 9th hole, they spoke in low tones. "How are you holding up, Fred?" Milt asked. Fred nodded slowly. "I'm doing okay. I agreed to follow through as planned, and everything unfolded just like you said it would. He always played golf on Saturdays, even after retirement. It was routine for him. I felt a pang when I saw the news about him running into the street. It was a tough call, but I did what needed to be done. Your horn startled him, and it shocked me too." Milt nodded, a serious look on his face. "It went smoother than I expected, almost as if it was meant to be." "I couldn't believe it when he died," Fred continued. "I called emergency, and Marty was there. Later, he said he felt cheated. I wanted him to witness it for closure," Milt said. "He had a tool, and I was worried he might do something drastic. My granddaughters deserved a normal life, and if Marty had been arrested, it would have been because of Lee. Did Larry deserve to die? Hard to say. But Marty and the girls deserved to move on and live." They never spoke about it again, walking side by side down the path.
Story 4.
Exposed my cheating girlfriend's secret social media life, leading to her family's complete downfall. Hillary and I had been together for nearly 4 years. She moved to the city during our junior year of high school, and we quickly became fast friends. I had never connected with someone as deeply as I did with her, We said our I love yous on the second day we spent together. The first 2 years were the most incredible of my life. We went to university together, literally spending almost every single day together. Hillary was everything I could have ever asked for, and I thought she was the one. I felt lucky to have someone like her. For the first 2 years, she would always bring up marriage, kids, and things like that. I was all in. We knew we wanted to go to the same college. She was going to take a teaching degree, and I was going to tackle engineering. But when it came time for me to take my diploma exam, I didn't get the grade I needed to get into the engineering program. Then things just sort of changed for me. It was like my whole future collapsed. I watched as my dreams of becoming an engineer shattered before my eyes. The disappointment and frustration weighed heavily on me, casting a dark shadow over everything. As my friends celebrated their successes and made plans for the future, I felt like I was standing still, frozen in time. Hillary noticed the change in me, the way I retreated into myself and became distant. At first, she tried to cheer me up, reminding me that there were other paths to take, other dreams to pursue. But I couldn't shake off the sense of failure that clung to me like a heavy cloak. I felt like a failure. From there, a couple of buddies of mine urged me to go into geological sciences. It was something that I had an interest in. But I never really thought of how I could make a career out of it since it had always just been a hobby. But I decided to give it a shot. The only catch was that the college offering the program was in a different city altogether, about a 12-hour drive from the college where Hillary had been accepted for her teaching degree. I applied to the program without telling her. Yeah, I know, bad boyfriend, but I knew she would try to talk me out of it, and I already felt low for not getting into the engineering program I had planned on. I ended up getting accepted into the program, but the excitement quickly turned into dread because I still hadn't told her about my new plan. How could I be so selfish as to choose my own path over Hillary's and potentially risk our relationship in the process? I ended up sitting her down and mustered up the courage to break the news to her. She didn't say much, just nodded as if processing the information. Then she said she had already been accepted to the college we had originally planned to attend together, and she wasn't going to walk away from that. I encouraged her not to. She was mad, upset, disappointed, all of it, but she said she didn't want to hold me back. I said we'd talk, text, and video chat every day if needed. I said I'd come back for all the big holidays and for fall and spring breaks. But when I was in school, the long distance combined with school and work started to put a serious strain on me. And I knew it had put a strain on our relationship. Soon enough, in hindsight, it may have been foolish, but I made the decision to prioritize her above all else. She became the most important thing in my life. I felt like a jerk for leaving her and like the biggest loser for moving away from all my friends and family. I ended up doing really badly that year because I would skip class just to video chat with her. I'd stay up late talking to her, lose focus, skip out on assignments, and ended up on academic probation. I considered dropping out, but my family insisted I stick it out. I ended up being really depressed. She seemed to be flourishing and doing really well. She said she missed me, but she wasn't going anywhere, that this was only temporary. She said we were doing this for our future, and that's what kept me going. She gave me some tough love, and I sort of snapped out of it. There were weekends she had planned to come out to see me, but then she'd back out at the last minute. She said an assignment came up or she wanted to spend the weekend studying. I didn't want to take her away from that. I just looked at it more as a business transaction. We had a job to do, and we were building our future together. I came back for Christmas and hardly saw her. I chalked it up to the fact that Christmas is a busy time of year, and we both had family to see and visit. Everyone sort of wanted a piece of me while I was finally in town, except for my own girlfriend. Then spring break came around. She kept telling me how excited she was to see me and all the things she had planned, but when I came back, she said she was super sick. I went to drop off some homemade soup and sandwiches one night, but it was a quick hi and bye. She didn't even kiss me on the lips because she said she didn't want to get me sick. I was bummed. When I went back to school, I worked my butt off trying to better myself so I could go into my second year on the right foot. I found my groove, and finally, summer break came around, and I came back home. Although I was unhappy and struggling with depression, I never let it show. I took responsibility for my emotions and tried my best to make her happy. Our once thriving relationship had changed, but I attributed it to us settling into a routine and the end of the honeymoon phase. Suddenly, she began expressing strong opposition to having children, even though I had never brought up the topic and still didn't want kids. This was also when she casually mentioned that she could live without getting married, a warning sign that I overlooked. But despite these hints, I chose to ignore them. Suddenly, I thought, Okay, maybe I don't want to get married, and maybe I don't want to be a dad. I was willing to put all of that aside for her. During this time, I came close to landing a dream job quite a few times, but I always came up just short. Each time, I sensed her respect for me dwindling. It was an internship that would have gotten my foot in the door. I told myself to stop being irrational and paranoid, and again ignored something that should have been a red flag. That brings us to our last year together. When we first started dating, we had sex all the time, like we'd skip class to do the deed. We both had high sex drives, and it was amazing. But this past year, we had sex a grand total of 3 times. Granted, I wasn't around much, but still. While I was away, she talked about what she'd do to me when I got back, as if she was going to jump my bones the first chance she got. But it wasn't like that at all. Each time, it was her doing me a favor after I had basically begged her. Despite constantly asking, she always responded with, "I don't feel attractive." However, I honored her wishes and stayed by her side because my love for her was too strong. During this time, my relationship with all my friends deteriorated, mostly because I was struggling with being away, trying to balance school and maintaining my relationship with her, and I was battling depression. Real bad. During this time, she was working hard and really taking care of herself. She lost some weight and was looking particularly delicious. She started regularly going to the gym and quickly lost a significant amount of weight. Physically, she was almost unrecognizable, and her personality seemed to change as well. She became emotionally distant, no longer displaying the neediness and clinginess that characterized our relationship before. Even when she showed me affection, it felt forced and insincere. I tried talking to her about it multiple times, but she always reassured me that everything was fine. I convinced myself that I was overthinking things and that my insecurities were getting the best of me, thanks to reading too many similar stories on Reddit. Being around her became unbearable, yet I couldn't bring myself to end things in case it was all in my head. I desperately wanted concrete proof of what I was feeling. One day, I had enough. I told her it didn't feel like we were in a relationship anymore. We got into a huge fight. I felt like I was talking to a stranger, someone I once knew so intimately but now couldn't recognize. Hillary said it was all in my head and that everything was fine. She said she was just working hard towards our future and that I needed to trust her. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over our relationship, casting a shadow on everything we once had. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was slipping away from me. She said I just needed to focus on myself and stay on track, that everything was fine. Then she suggested we go to Mexico for spring break. She said it would be the perfect place to let loose, relax, and spend some intimate time together. I quickly jumped at the idea. We spent the night excitedly looking at all-inclusive packages. We eventually found one that worked for both of us, and we were going to meet each other there. Well, a few days before we were supposed to leave, she drops this bombshell, saying she can't go anymore. Hillary told me she had to work on an important project and couldn't take the time off for the trip. I was disappointed. I flipped out, but she got mad at me, saying she was doing this for us and that I needed to be more understanding. I pointed out that I was now stuck with a huge bill that we were supposed to split between the two of us. This trip was supposed to save our relationship, and it didn't even feel like she was putting me first anymore. She said I was being unreasonable and selfish, that I didn't understand how hard she was working, and that everything she was doing was for me and for the relationship. I backed off, tried to understand the importance of her work, and didn't want to pressure her into coming with me. But I couldn't help but feel like I had been sacrificing my own happiness and well-being for the sake of our relationship, only to be met with accusations of not being supportive enough. It felt like a slap in the face. She told me I should still go on the trip and that she would call me every night. We could video chat, and she said the trip would be good for me, to relax and get my mind off school. Ultimately, I went to Mexico by myself. On the nights we were supposed to video chat, she'd say she had to turn in early, so we only talked for about 20 minutes at a time. One night, she said goodnight, and we said our goodbyes. Then, I'm scrolling through Instagram and I watch a mutual friend of ours story. She's at a bar taking shots, and Hillary is with her. I'm like, maybe this is an old video and her friend is just posting this now. Then I go on Messenger, and it says Hillary was active 30 minutes ago. Well, she said she was going to bed 2 hours ago, so what's she doing still up? I go on Snapchat, but Hillary has turned off her live location. She usually shares her location, but I've never had to use it before. Okay. Then I go back to Instagram and message our friend. I ask what bar they're at, and she responds with the name and sends a photo of a drink in her hand so I know it's live. I know she's there right now, and I know Hillary is there too. I text Hillary and say, I thought you were sleeping. Then I try to go back and see the story again, but her friend has deleted it. Now I'm fuming. Hillary doesn't respond. I try to go to sleep, but I can't. It's still early and there's a bar down by the beach that's still open, so I get dressed and go down for some drinks. I ended up meeting some people there, and there's an attractive woman who's pretty flirty with me, Heidi. We end up drinking together, and she asks me to come back to her room. She rubs my leg, and I put my hand down to sort of stop her from going any further. I say, I'm flattered, but I'm seeing someone. She apologizes, says she didn't know, and totally respects that. We end up adding each other on Instagram, and it's totally harmless. I also added a few more people from the group she was with. We all hung out, and I actually really enjoyed myself. I spent the rest of the vacation with that group. Anyway, Hillary still didn't respond to my text. The next morning, I sent another message with a bunch of question marks. About 2 hours later, she responds, saying she went out with Trish, our mutual friend. She says Trish needed to get out and asked her last minute. She says Trish needed a friend. I asked, why did you lie? She said she didn't lie, she just didn't feel the need to text me because she thought I'd be asleep. Then I said, why did you think I was asleep? I'm here all alone. Do you think I'm a loser? She said, whoa, where did that come from? I told her I didn't go to bed either. I went to a bar and met some cool people. Then I guess there's a photo that I was tagged in, and Heidi's arm is around me in the photo, but there's a group of us in it. Hillary forwards me that photo an hour later and says, cool people, huh? I read it and didn't respond. That night, a buddy of mine texted me and told me that Hillary was at the bar with Trish, and that she was seen with another guy. I said, what guy? He sent me a text of Hillary sitting on some random guy's lap. My buddy then sent another photo of the guy kissing her neck. Then another one of them dancing, but basically on top of each other. Well, here I am, in Mexico all by myself, and I find out my girlfriend is cheating on me. My buddy texted me to apologize, and I said, don't be sorry. I sent a screenshot of the woman who had tried to get with me the night before. My buddy then said, you know what I would do, and I did. I did know what my friend would do. So, I went on Instagram and messaged Heidi asking her out for dinner. We ended up going to a lovely dinner and sitting at a poolside bar. We got to know each other, and she asked me what happened to what I said earlier. I said earlier, she said, yeah, you're seeing someone. I said, forget I ever said that. I then went on to tell her basically my life story, and I showed her those photos of Hillary with some random guy. Heidi then said her offer still stands. Did I take her up on that offer? Hell yeah, I did. She even grabbed my phone and took a selfie of her mouth on a certain part of my anatomy. I'll let you guess which one. Let's just say, I came to Mexico to relax and get my mind off school, and my mind was definitely not on school. Later that night, I posted the pictures of Hillary and her new guy in my social stories with the caption, Miss Hillary is a cheater who will be teaching the next generation. Do you want her teaching your future kids? Then she texted me saying, how could you do this? What are you thinking? You're out of your mind. She asked how I could treat my girlfriend like that, and I said, girlfriend? I'm single. I can do whatever I want in paradise. Then I sent her the photo of Heidi making me feel good and told her, I'm doing this for my future. Well, well, well. Looks like Hillary wasn't just studying, she was taking some extracurricular activities too. As they say, when life gives you lemons, trade them for a shot of something stronger and let the good times roll. Lesson well learned. Never underestimate the power of a tropical getaway to clarify your relationship status. At least I got to discover the crumbling ruins of my relationship against the backdrop of a picturesque paradise. And cheers to that buddy of mine who had my back. It may feel like a solitary journey navigating through the chaos of betrayal, heartache, and depression. But having that one friend who sees through the storm and throws you a lifeline is true friendship. Update 1. Quick update. I came back from Mexico to find out that Hillary has an OnlyFans account. Another buddy of mine screenshot her account and sent it to me, and it's definitely her. Guess she's been real busy since I've been away at school. I sent the screenshots to her family and friends, and by this point I don't even care. Then it came out that Hillary wasn't even going to school. She dropped out in the first semester because she failed some classes but managed to pretend like she was going. She was actually just creating a following on OnlyFans. She took on the persona of Miss Hill. Update 2. Hillary's actions had broader implications for her family's reputation and social standing within her community. Her father was actually a man of pretty big importance and ended up losing some big clients. Her father's reputation took a hit that even he couldn't recover from. The strain caused her parents to divorce, and her dad moved out of town. I'm not sure where he ended up, I never asked. I still talk to Hillary's sister from time to time. And I guess their mom isn't talking to Hillary. She's not allowed home and has been working at some Dollar Tree, but her OnlyFans isn't active anymore. Hillary and her family are totally disgraced. They've lost everything. I feel bad for her sister. Meanwhile, I'm finishing up school and feel like I'm in a really good place. I finally got my head out of my butt and met some new people. It's starting to feel like home. I even talked to Heidi a bit here and there, and she's planning on coming out to see me next month. We're not putting any expectations on it. We're friends, she's cool, and we're just having fun. For the first time in, well, ever, I don't regret moving here and doing something for myself. I guess not getting into engineering turned out to be one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. Life's weird. Looks like Miss Hill found her calling in the digital age. Who knew failing classes could be a career move? On the bright side, at least her OnlyFans was entitled Missed Opportunities. But hey, while Hill's dealing with that fallout and stirring the pot, I'm busy acing life's exams and making new connections. Who knew the school of hard knocks could lead to such a bright future? It just goes to show that even when the path ahead seems uncertain, there's always a silver lining waiting to be discovered. What do you make of this? Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.